I'm married and 33 years old. My husband David and I have been married for 10 years, and we have a first-grade daughter named Betty. We're a family of 3. I've loved drawing since I was a kid, and now I work in the arts. I'm also pregnant with our second child, and each day gets harder as my belly grows. Even though David is very busy, he tries to come home early and helps with chores and taking care of our daughter. Life was good until something recently started bothering me. We live on the first floor of a high-rise apartment building. The other day, while coming back from shopping, I saw a woman moving into our building. It turned out to be Emma, a classmate from middle school. I hadn't seen her since then. When she saw me, she was surprised and asked if I lived there too. I said yes, and she told me she was moving in. Emma's face changed when she realized I was living in the same building as her. She was shocked that a high school dropout like me lived in the first-floor apartment. She seemed to take pleasure in the fact that I was on the first floor, while she was on the 35th floor. She bragged about how her apartment had great views and how she was starting her own business, using the apartment as both her home and office. She asked me about my job, and I told her I worked in art. Emma was dismissive and acted like drawing wasn't a real job. I felt hurt, so I told her that I had turned something I love into a career. Emma didn't seem impressed and suggested that I must be making very little money, like $900 a month. Just then, David and our daughter Betty came by. Emma looked them over and said something rude about David's work clothes and our income. I felt insulted and finally snapped at her, but she just kept being disrespectful and condescending. Finally, I'd had enough of Emma's rudeness. I told her she needed to apologize for what she said about my husband. Emma just laughed and asked why she should apologize. Then she noticed my pregnancy and commented that it must be tough financially with another child on the way. She questioned if we could even afford to live in our apartment. I didn't want to hear any more of Emma's nasty comments, so I grabbed David and Betty and went home. Emma called after us, inviting us to visit her on the 35th floor for a better view, but I ignored her. I couldn't stop feeling angry at Emma all day. That night, after Betty went to sleep, David asked what happened. I told him how Emma had made fun of me for dropping out of school and belittled my work. David was furious. He knew about my past and had chosen to marry me knowing who I am. We decided to avoid Emma for a while. Fortunately, we didn't run into Emma for a month, which allowed us to live peacefully. Then, one day we received an invitation to a school reunion. I was excited to catch up with my old friends, even though I was a bit worried about running into Emma again. But since I wanted to see my friends, I decided to go. The reunion was held in a hotel ballroom. As soon as I arrived, I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. We had a great time catching up, talking about our families and careers. But then, out of nowhere, we heard Emma's voice behind us, saying something rude about being around poor people. As expected, she was still the same. Emma showed up at the reunion too, but we didn't notice her at first because we were focused on talking with our close friends. Emma was wearing heavy makeup and a flashy dress that seemed out of place. She had always been self-centered and made awkward comments back in middle school, so we weren't surprised to see she hadn't changed. We rolled our eyes when she arrived. One of my friends finally spoke up and asked Emma who she was calling poor. Emma replied, "Who else but Mary? She's a dropout, so she must be poor and lives on the first floor. I live on the 35th floor. So it's like a master-servant relationship." Emma laughed after saying this, and some friends were upset and confronted her, but she didn't seem sorry at all. Emma kept making rude comments, suggesting I should move to a cheaper apartment if I didn't want to be caught poor. She even told me to leave the reunion, since I supposedly earned only $900 a month. My friends were confused and asked if I really only made $900 a month. I explained that's just what Emma believes. Emma then interrupted and said I was only working a part-time job because of being a dropout. While she was a CEO, a male classmate spoke up and said, "Emma, don't you know Mary is a well-known artist?" Emma looked puzzled and asked, "An artist? Who cares?" I decided to clear things up with Emma. not wanting her arrogance to ruin the reunion. I told her that I had studied art in France right after middle school and didn't complete a formal program. So yes, I dropped out. Emma scoffed and said, "Studying art is just a hobby, not a real job. You're still a dropout who ran away from studying." Emma clearly didn't understand. I decided to explain more about my work. I told Emma that I had spent years training and now run an art gallery while also creating my own artwork. I have fans and have even held my own exhibitions. Some of our classmates have bought my art. After training in France, I returned to New York and started my art career, which has become successful in recent years. David and I met at one of my exhibitions, and we clicked, which led to our marriage. Even with all this, Emma still didn't seem to understand. She said, "An exhibition is just for fun. I'm clearly the winner here because I'm a CEO." I was frustrated and told her that this wasn't about winning or losing. I take my art seriously, even if she doesn't see it that way. Emma then asked why we live on the first floor if I'm making so much money. I explained that we used to live on a higher floor, but since I'm pregnant and elevators can't be slow, we moved to the first floor for convenience. Emma didn't seem to accept my explanation. My friends and even some classmates knew about my career as an artist, but Emma probably didn't consider it because she had no interest in art and looked down on me for being a dropout. I was about to share another detail when I saw David and Betty at the entrance. Betty was running towards me, with David following behind and looking a bit embarrassed. David apologized, saying he got caught up with work and brought Betty along. Emma then noticed David's sharp suit and asked why he was dressed up when he was in work clothes last time she saw him. David greeted my friends, thanking them for being kind to me and asking if there was anything they needed. Just then, the reunion organizer rushed over to thank us for providing the venue. He praised the food and drinks, saying everything was excellent. David's parents owned the hotel, and David, now the CEO, had generously offered it for free. Emma's face turned pale when she heard this. I dropped out of middle school and only have a high school diploma, which seems a bit unusual. There's a reason for it, but we live in different worlds. She had looked down on me as poor, but here I was as an artist and the wife of a CEO. Emma was shocked and asked why a dropout like me was married to someone so important while she, an elite, was still single. She seemed bitter and challenged me on how I managed it. David finally noticed Emma and said, "Oh, we've met before. Sorry for being in work clothes last time. I was helping with a neighborhood cleanup. As the owner of the high-rise, it's important to maintain good relations in the community." Emma's face went white. "Wait, you own that high-rise?" she asked. David explained that his family had been wealthy for generations, involved in hotel management and owning many properties, including the high-rise where we live. David then invited Emma to visit the penthouse, which has a great view of the Empire State Building. Emma was stunned again and asked why we lived on the first floor if we had a penthouse. I explained that, because I'm pregnant, we moved to the first floor for convenience, but both the penthouse and the first floor are ours. Emma was speechless and looked like she couldn't believe it. Seeing the reaction from our friends and feeling that I had ruined the reunion's atmosphere, I decided to leave with David and Betty. As we were leaving, Emma muttered something rude about a dropout being so cocky. I turned to Betty and said, "What matters most is what's inside. Never look down on people." Betty cheerfully added, "Emma, if you keep making faces like that, happiness will run away from you." Everyone laughed, and the mood of the reunion improved. Emma, now embarrassed, quickly left. The reunion continued on a positive note. I enjoyed the rest of the evening with my friends, who also had bad experiences with Emma. Betty's comment had made everyone feel better. Months went by, and we didn't see Emma at the high-rise again. One day, David came home and told me that Emma had finally moved out. She hadn't paid rent for 3 months, and we had to get a lawyer to issue an eviction notice. Emma left town quickly after that. David said Emma had left the apartment exactly as it was. Furniture and clothes were still there. She took her expensive items and computer, but left everything else behind. At first, I was suspicious, but a friend updated me on Emma's situation. It turns out she had been pretending to be successful but was actually jobless. She had some savings from her career, but couldn't keep up her lifestyle and fell behind on rent. She had no other place to go, so she left her belongings because she couldn't afford to get rid of them. I was disgusted to learn that Emma was still a burden to others. Even in her crisis, her terrible personality meant she had no friends or colleagues to help her. Now she's living in a rundown apartment and struggling with part-time jobs. She used to brag about being an elite and looked down on me as a dropout. I'm sure her pride is shattered now. I hope she learns to live a more humble and honest life. As for me, I'm happy with my life. I continue to paint, spend time with my husband and daughter, and look forward to our new baby. Our family of 3 gets along wonderfully, and I'm excited about expanding our family. I'll keep doing everything I can to protect our happiness.
I never expected my daughter to show up at my doorstep married. Not on a Tuesday night, not after a double shift that left my feet screaming, and definitely not to a man I'd only met twice. My name is Maggie, and until that moment, I thought I knew everything about my daughter Lily. 24 years of being her only parent had given me that confidence. But there she stood on my porch, her hand intertwined with Jake's, both of them wearing matching nervous smiles and gold bands that caught the porch light. "Surprise, Mom." Lily's voice cracked with forced cheerfulness. "We did it." I gripped my purse strapped tighter, the vinyl creaking under my fingers. The smell of grease from the diner still clung to my uniform, and suddenly I felt every one of my 52 years weighing me down. "Did what exactly?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. Jake stepped forward, all charm and perfect teeth. "We got married, Mrs. O'Hara. This morning, actually." He wrapped his arm around Lily's waist. "We wanted it to be spontaneous, romantic." "Romantic," I echoed, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. Through the fog of exhaustion, memories of another impulsive marriage, my own, flashed through my mind. "Come inside, both of you." My small living room felt even smaller with 3 people in it. Jake settled onto my couch like he belonged there, while Lily perched on the armrest beside him, her legs bouncing with nervous energy. "Mom, I know what you're thinking," Lily started. "Do you?" I set my purse down carefully, buying time to steady my voice. "Because I'm thinking about how you've known Jake for what? 4 months. 5, Jake corrected, as if that extra month made all the difference. 5 months, I said. "And neither of you has a steady job, or a place to live, or—" "Actually," Lily interrupted, her eyes lighting up with that familiar determination I'd seen since she was little, "we were hoping we could stay here. Just until we get on our feet." The ceiling fan whirred above us, pushing around stale air. I noticed Jake's eyes darting around the room, taking in the worn furniture, the faded wallpaper I'd been meaning to replace for years. Something in his gaze made my skin prickle. "Of course you can stay," I heard myself say, because what choice did I have? "The spare room needs clearing out, but—" "Thank you, Mrs. O'Hara," Jake cut in, standing up smoothly. "We really appreciate this. I promise we won't be a burden." There was something practiced about his gratitude, like a sales pitch he'd given before. But Lily was beaming at him like he'd just promised her the moon, and I swallowed my unease. "I need to shower," I said, retreating toward the hallway. "We can talk more over dinner." "Oh, we already ate," Lily called after me. "But Jake can bring our bags in while you clean up." In the bathroom, I turned the water as hot as I could stand it. Through the thin walls, I heard them whispering, followed by the front door opening and closing. My reflection in the steamy mirror looked haunted. The last time I'd seen that look on my face was 25 years ago, when I'd made my own impulsive decision that changed everything. But this was different, I told myself. Lily was smarter than I had been. Jake seemed nice enough. So why couldn't I shake this feeling that I'd just invited a fox into my henhouse? As I stepped into the shower, I heard them moving around in the spare room, their muffled laughter floating through the walls. My daughter was married. To a stranger. And now they were both living under my roof. I closed my eyes and let the water drum against my face, wondering how long it would take before I discovered exactly what kind of man my new son-in-law really was. It's amazing how quickly a house can change. After just 1 week of Lily and Jake living with me, my quiet sanctuary felt like a pressure cooker about to blow. I was washing dishes when I heard them arguing in the spare room again. Their voices carried through the thin walls, muffled but tense. These spats had become more frequent, always about money, always ending with Lily in tears and Jake storming out. The front door slammed right on cue. I dried my hands and waited, counting down in my head. 3, 2, 1. Mom. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, eyes red-rimmed. Do you have any aspirin? Top cabinet, left side. I watched her reach for the bottle, noticing how her wedding ring caught the afternoon light. Want to talk about it? It's nothing. She swallowed 2 pills dry. Jake's just stressed about job hunting. I bit back the urge to point out that Jake spent more time networking at bars than actually looking for work. Instead, I asked, how about we grab lunch? My treat. Can't. Jake's taking the car to meet some business contact. She slumped against the counter. He thinks this guy might have an opportunity for him. Another opportunity. Last week it was cryptocurrency. The week before that, some multi-level marketing scheme involving essential oils. The mail slot clattered, and I welcomed the excuse to step away. Bills, junk mail, and a thick envelope addressed to Jake Turner. It had fallen open slightly, revealing what looked like bank statements. My stomach twisted as I caught a glimpse of red numbers. Lily, honey? I called out, keeping my voice steady. Could you come here? But when I turned around, it wasn't Lily standing there. It was Jake. He must have come back through the side door. I'll take those. He snatched the mail from my hands, his charm nowhere in sight. Wouldn't want you troubling yourself with our personal matters. This is my house, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. If there are financial issues, there aren't. His smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Everything's under control. I just need a little time to get things sorted. Jake. Lily appeared behind him. I thought you left. Forgot my phone. He kissed her cheek, tucking the mail into his back pocket. Don't wait up, babe. This meeting might run late. After he left, Lily helped me prepare dinner, chattering about Jake's potential business ventures like a kid talking about Santa Claus. I nodded along, but my mind kept returning to those red numbers. That evening, my friend Carla called. How's married life treating you? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I think Jake's in trouble, Carla. I lowered my voice, though I was alone in my bedroom. Deep trouble. What kind of trouble? I don't know yet. But something's not right. I described the mysterious meetings, the arguments, the glimpse of those bank statements. Want me to run a background check? As a real estate agent, Carla had connections. Just to be safe? I hesitated. It felt like a betrayal, but the memory of Jake's cold eyes when he grabbed that mail haunted me. Give me his full name and date of birth if you can get it, she said. I'll be discreet. After hanging up, I heard the front door open. Jake's voice drifted up the stairs, followed by Lily's excited squeal. I crept to the landing and listened. It's perfect, babe, he was saying. Once we get the loan, we can start fresh. No more living under mommy's roof. But how? Lily asked. We don't have any collateral. Don't worry about that. Jake's voice dropped lower, but I caught his next words clearly. Your mom's house is worth way more than we need. I gripped the banister, my knuckles turning white. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about protecting my daughter anymore. I was fighting for everything I'd spent my life building. And Jake Turner had just declared war. Carla's text came at 3 a.m. Check your email. Now. I sat up in bed, fumbling for my reading glasses. The bright screen made my eyes water as I opened the attachment. What I saw made my stomach drop. Jake Turner wasn't even his real name. I scrolled through page after page of court records, bankruptcy filings, and restraining orders. James Thomas Kelly had quite the history. 3 ex-wives, all of whom he'd financially ruined. The pattern was always the same. Marriage, joint accounts, forged documents, emptied savings. Then he'd vanish, only to resurface in another state with a new name and a new target. My hands were shaking as I got dressed. The pre-dawn air felt electric as I paced my kitchen, waiting for Carla to arrive. When headlights swept across my window, I nearly jumped out of my skin. You look like hell, Carla said, stepping inside. She carried a thick manila folder. There's more. Worse than 3 previous wives? He's got warrants in 2 states. She spread the documents across my kitchen table. And look at this, he's already filed paperwork to add his name to your deed. That's impossible. But there it was in black and white, a half-completed application with my forged signature. I never signed anything. Keep looking. Buried in the stack was a loan application. My house was listed as collateral for $250,000. The signature looked exactly like mine. He must have practiced, I whispered, touching the forgery. All those times he was job hunting, he was practicing my signature. A floorboard creaked upstairs. We froze, staring at each other as footsteps approached the stairs. Mom, Lily called out. Why are you up so early? Carla and I scrambled to gather the papers. I shoved them into the folder just as Lily appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her bathrobe. Carla, Lily blinked in confusion. What's going on? Just some real estate stuff. Carla lied smoothly. Your mom's thinking about refinancing. At 3 in the morning? Before I could answer, the side door opened. James, whatever his name was, stepped in from the garage. He wore a suit I'd never seen before, looking fresh despite the early hour. Ladies, he said, his smile never wavering. Having a party without me? My skin crawled at how easily he could lie, how natural that charm seemed even now. I clutched the folder tighter. Just catching up, I said, matching his casual tone. You're out early. Another meeting. He kissed Lily's cheek. Actually, I need to talk to you about something, Maggie. Got a minute? I should go, Carla announced, but her eyes met mine with clear warning. Don't let him know what you know. After Carla left, Lily drifted back upstairs to shower. Jake sat across from me at the kitchen table, exactly where those damning documents had been spread moments ago. I've been thinking, he began, about how to thank you for your hospitality. Oh, I want to help with the mortgage. In fact, he reached into his jacket. I've got some papers that could really ease your financial burden. He pulled out a document identical to the one I'd just seen. My stomach lurched. Just need your signature, he said, sliding it across the table. Then we can really be family. I stared at the paper, at his manicured hands, at the wedding ring that probably wasn't his first. Or second. Or third. I'll need to think about it, I heard myself say. Something dark flickered behind his eyes, just for a moment. Of course. Take your time. He stood, straightening his tie. But not too long. Opportunities like this don't last forever. The threat in his voice was subtle but clear. As he headed upstairs to join Lily, I pulled out my phone and typed a quick text to Carla. He's making his move. What do we do? Her response came seconds later. We fight back. But first, we need to tell Lily the truth. I closed my eyes, remembering the adoring way my daughter looked at her husband. This would destroy her. But if I didn't act soon, he would destroy us all. The folder of evidence felt like it was burning a hole in my purse as I walked to my neighbor Tom's house. I needed someone outside this mess to tell me if I was crazy, if I was overreacting. Most of all, I needed someone who wouldn't judge me for what I was about to do. Tom was watering his roses when I approached. He took one look at my face and turned off the hose. Coffee? He asked, already heading toward his door. Inside his kitchen, everything was neat and organized, the opposite of the chaos my life had become. Tom set 2 mugs on the counter and waited while I spread out James's documentation across his table. Jesus, he whispered, examining the forged signatures. And Lily has no idea? She's in love. The words tasted bitter. Or thinks she is. Have you gone to the police? I shook my head. The moment I do that, I lose her. You don't know Lily. She'll see it as a betrayal. She'll run away with him. Tom studied the restraining orders from Jake's previous wives. Maybe that's better than letting him steal everything you've worked for. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Carla, 911. Jake at bank right now. Trying to process loan. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Tom read the message over my shoulder. Go, he said. I'll clean this up and bring the documents to your house. I broke every speed limit getting to the bank. Through the glass doors, I could see Jake at a desk with a loan officer, wearing that same perfect suit, that same perfect smile. My entrance must have looked wild because several heads turned. This man is committing fraud, I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jake's smile flickered but didn't fade. Maggie, he said smoothly, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I'm just helping with your refinancing, remember? We discussed this. The loan officer looked between us, confused. Mrs. O'Hara? You did sign these documents, correct? Those signatures are forged. My voice shook. And this man isn't Jake Turner. His real name is James Kelly, and he's wanted in 2 states. The room went silent. Jake's facade cracked for just a moment, showing something dark and dangerous underneath. Then my phone rang Lily's ringtone. Mom. She was crying. Why is Tom here with a bunch of papers about Jake? What are you doing? Jake stood up, straightening his tie. I should go check on my wife, he said to the loan officer. She sounds upset. Don't you dare. I stepped between him and the door. Don't you go near her. Or what? He leaned in close, whispering so only I could hear. You'll lose her anyway. At least my way. She gets to keep her illusions about love. The loan officer was on the phone, presumably with security. Jake used the distraction to slip past me, but I grabbed his arm. You want to play it this way? He hissed. Fine. But remember, I'm the one she trusts. I'm the one she'll believe. And by the time she realizes the truth, it'll be too late for both of you. He yanked free and walked out, leaving me standing there with my evidence and my fury. My phone kept ringing Lily, then Carla, then Lily again. The loan officer approached cautiously. Mrs. O'Hara? We'll need to file a report. But I was already moving. Because Jake was right about one thing, Lily would believe him. Unless I dialed a number I'd been staring at for days. Angela Kelly, Jake's first wife. Hello. A tired voice answered. My name is Maggie O'Hara, I said, walking to my car. And I think we need to talk about James Kelly. There was a long pause. Then, is he using the name Jake Turner? Yes. Get your daughter and get out of there, she said. No. Before he does what he did to me. I started the engine, my mind racing. I can't leave. This is my house, my life. Then you better be ready for war, Angela replied. Because that's exactly what you're in for. As I drove home, I realized she was right. This wasn't just about protecting my daughter anymore. This was about stopping a predator before he could hurt anyone else. And I was done playing nice. Angela Kelly's words haunted me as I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark except for the kitchen light, where I could see Jake and Lily's silhouettes through the window. They were arguing again. I sat in my car watching them. Jake's gestures were controlled, reasonable, while Lily's grew more frantic. Classic manipulation. I'd seen it before, lived it before, but never from this side of the glass. My phone lit up with a text from Angela. Meeting arranged with Sarah and Michelle tomorrow. Jake's wives number 2 and number 3. Bringing proof. I typed back, how did you survive it? I didn't. Not really. Still paying off the debts he left me with. The kitchen door slammed. Lily stormed out, mascara streaking her cheeks. She spotted my car and froze, then turned and ran toward the backyard. Jake appeared in the doorway, watching her go. When he noticed me, he smiled and waved, like we were neighbors sharing a pleasant evening. I got out of my car, clutching my purse with its damning evidence. Where's she going? Just needs to cool off. He leaned against the doorframe. You know how emotional she gets. Like her mother. The casual cruelty in his voice made my fingers itch. What did you say to her? Actually, we were discussing you. His smile turned sharp. About how your paranoia is tearing this family apart. How you can't let her grow up, be happy. Happy. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet night. Like your other wives were happy? His expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Careful, Magje. Some might call that slander. Some might call forging signatures and stealing homes fraud. Prove it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. But ask yourself what happens to Lily when you do. When she realizes her mother destroyed her marriage. When everyone sees how you drove away the only man who ever loved her. You don't love her. No, he agreed easily. But she believes I do. And that's what matters, isn't it? A noise made us both turn. Lily stood at the corner of the house, her face pale in the porch light. How much had she heard? Mom. Her voice cracked. What's going on? Jake moved first, reaching for her. Your mother's upset, baby. She's been imagining things. Don't touch her. The words came out like a growl. Mom, stop it. Lily pulled away from both of us. This is exactly what I was telling Jake. You're trying to control everything, just like always. Lily, please. No, I'm not a child anymore. I love Jake and he loves me, and you need to accept that or... She swallowed hard. Or maybe we shouldn't be here at all. Jake's arms slid around her shoulders, comforting and possessive. Maybe that's best, sweetheart. We could leave tonight, start fresh somewhere else. My blood ran cold. This was his play. Isolate her, take her away, then bleed her dry like all the others. I couldn't let that happen. But if I showed my evidence now, she'd run straight into his trap. No one's leaving tonight, I said, forcing my voice steady. It's late. We're all tired. Let's talk in the morning. Jake's eyes narrowed, suspicious of my sudden calm. Good. Let him wonder what I was planning. Fine, Lily muttered, pulling away from Jake. But this conversation isn't over. I watched them go inside, my daughter leaning on the shoulder of a predator. My phone buzzed again, another text from Angela. Got the police reports ready. Meeting set for 10 a.m. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow I'd have 3 of Jake's ex-wives, all their evidence, and one chance to save my daughter without losing her forever. But tonight, I looked up at my bedroom window, where a shadow moved against the light. Tonight, I had to share my roof with a man who'd destroyed 3 families before ours. A man who was probably already planning his escape route. Game on, James Kelly, I whispered to the night air. Let's see who breaks first. The coffee shop felt too bright, too normal for what was about to happen. Angela Kelly sat across from me, her hands wrapped around an untouched latte. Sarah and Michelle flanked her, 3 women united by the same betrayal. 3 versions of my daughter's future if I didn't stop this. He's getting sloppy, Sarah said, spreading photos across the table. Used to wait at least a year before trying for the house. With you, it's been what? 2 months. He's desperate, Michelle added. Lost everything in the last scam. A bell chimed. Lily walked in, her face hardening when she saw me. Jake wasn't with her, small mercies. What is this? She stopped at our table, arms crossed. Another intervention? Sit down, I said quietly. Please. These women, Lily started, are Jake's wives, Angela cut in. Or rather, James Kelly's wives. Lily's face went pale, but she lifted her chin. You're lying. Marriage certificate, Sarah laid it out. Divorce papers. Police reports. Bank statements, Michelle added. Forged documents. Sound familiar. Lily's hands trembled as she picked up a photo. Jake with Angela, both younger, smiling at their wedding. The same smile he'd given her. This is... She swallowed hard. This can't be. The coffee shop door chimed again. Jake stood there, taking in the scene with calculated precision. His eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, I saw the mask slip completely. Quite the reunion, he said, walking over. Angela. Sarah. Michelle. You all look, well, exactly how I left you. Jake. Lily's voice cracked. What are they talking about? He sighed, pulling up a chair. It's complicated, baby. These women, they're from a dark time in my life. I was going to tell you. Like hell you were, Angela snapped. You were going to drain her accounts and disappear, just like you did to us. Is that true? Lily turned to him. The loan applications Mom found. The forged signatures. Jake's face softened with practiced concern. Your mother's been poisoning you against me from day one. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I have a past. But what we have is different. Different? Michelle laughed bitterly. That's what he told all of us. Lily, I reached for her hand. Look at the evidence. Look at what he's done. But Jake was faster. He grabbed Lily's arm, pulling her close. We can start fresh. Right now. Leave all this behind. I love you. Isn't that what matters? Don't touch her. I stood up, but Jake's next words froze me. Tell them about the baby, Lily. The world stopped. Lily's hand drifted to her stomach, tears streaming down her face. I'm 6 weeks, she whispered. Jake's triumphant smile told me everything. He'd won. No matter what evidence we had, no matter what truths we revealed, he'd ensured his connection to our family was permanent. Congratulations, he said to me, his voice dripping with mock sincerity. You're going to be a grandmother. Lily pulled away from all of us, backing toward the door. I can't. She ran. Jake moved to follow, but Angela blocked his path. Let her process, he said smoothly. Maggie, you've done enough damage for one day, don't you think? I watched my daughter disappear into the parking lot, my chest tight with panic. Jake gathered his coat, every movement deliberate. By the way, he paused at my shoulder. I filed those loan papers this morning. Turns out your signature's already on them. Funny how that works. He walked out, leaving me with 3 broken women and a pile of useless evidence. He always has a backup plan, Sarah said softly. Always finds a way to make you doubt yourself. My phone buzzed, a text from Lily. Don't follow me. I need time. I sank back into my chair, the weight of failure crushing me. I'd tried to protect my daughter, but instead, I'd pushed her further into Jake's arms. Now he had everything, my daughter, my future grandchild, and soon my home. What do I do? I asked the women who'd lived this nightmare before me. Angela reached across the table, gripping my hand. We fight. Harder than before. Because now it's not just about Lily anymore. 3 days of silence from Lily felt like 3 years. I'd worn a path in my kitchen floor from pacing when Tom knocked on my door that rainy evening. She's at my house, he said without preamble. She needs you. I found Lily curled up on Tom's couch, a stack of papers clutched to her chest. Her eyes were red, but clearer than I'd seen them in months. He emptied our account, she said as I sat beside her. Every penny of my savings. And I found these in his car. She handed me the papers. Loan documents, bank statements, a half-dozen driver's licenses with Jake's photo but different names. And ultrasound photos, not hers, but dated years ago, with another woman's name. He's used the pregnancy story before, she whispered. I'm not. I was never. The front door opened. Jake stood there, rain dripping from his expensive suit. Tom moved to block his path, but Jake just smiled. Family meeting? He stepped inside. How convenient. I have the final loan papers right here. Just need those signatures, Maggie, and we can all move forward. There's nothing to move forward to. Lily stood up, shaking. I know about the other pregnancies. The other wives. The other scams. Something dangerous flickered across Jake's face. Baby, you're confused. Your mother's gotten in your head. Stop. Lily's voice cracked. Just stop lying. Everything I did was for us. He switched tactics, his tone softening. Yes, I made mistakes. But the money's real now. One signature and we're set for life. Using my mother's house as collateral? Lily laughed bitterly. Like you used Angela's? And Sarah's? And Michelle's. Jake's charm vanished. You ungrateful little, he lunged forward. I moved without thinking, putting myself between them. Touch her and it's assault charges on top of the fraud. Fraud. His laugh was ugly. Your signature's already on those papers, remember? Good luck proving otherwise. Actually, Tom spoke up, holding up his phone. I think this conversation will help with that. Jake's eyes widened as he realized he was being recorded. He backed toward the door, calculations running behind his eyes. You really want to do this? He snarled. Fine. But remember, I've got nothing left to lose. You really think this ends here? No, I said quietly. It ends at the police station. Angela, Sarah, and Michelle are there right now, filing charges. All they needed was one more victim to establish a pattern. And proof of intent, Lily added, her voice stronger now. Like this conversation. Jake's hand twitched toward his pocket, his car keys. But Tom was faster, blocking the door. Move, Jake growled. Make me. The punch was swift, but Tom was ready. They grappled, crashing into the coffee table. I grabbed Lily, pulling her back as Jake broke free and bolted for the door. He made it 3 steps into the rain before police lights flooded the street. Perfect timing, Carla, I whispered, watching my friend step out of her car, where she'd been waiting with her phone ready to make the call. Jake tried to run, but slipped on the wet grass. As the officers approached, he looked back at us, at Lily specifically, one last time. I did love you, he said. In my way. Lily stepped forward, out of my protective grip. No. You loved what you thought you could take from me. There's a difference. We watched them put him in the police car. Lily leaned against me, her body shaking with sobs or laughter. Maybe both. Mom, she whispered. I'm sorry. For not trusting you. For not seeing. Sure. I held her closer. You saw it when it mattered. Tom came up beside us, sporting what would become an impressive black eye. Let's get you both inside. I think this calls for something stronger than coffee. As we turned to go in, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in Tom's window, mother and daughter, battered but unbroken. Jake had tried to tear us apart, but in the end, he'd only proved what I'd known all along. Our bond was stronger than any con man's game. The rain washed away Jake's tire tracks as the police car disappeared around the corner, taking with it all his false promises and paper dreams. 6 months after Jake's arrest, I found myself back at the same coffee shop where everything had fallen apart. This time, I sat across from Angela, Sarah, and Michelle, watching them pass around photos of Jake's sentencing. 10 years, Angela said, sliding the envelope across the table. Plus restitution to all of us. Small comfort, Michelle added, stirring her coffee. But better than nothing. The bell chimed, and Lily walked in. She looked different now, stronger, more herself. The shadows under her eyes had faded, replaced by a quiet determination I recognized from my own mirror. Sorry I'm late, she said, pulling up a chair. The support group ran long. She'd been attending meetings with other fraud victims, turning her pain into purpose. Sometimes she came home angry, sometimes in tears, but always moving forward. How's the house hunting going? Sarah asked. Found a small apartment, Lily smiled. Mom's helping with the deposit. Speaking of help, Angela pulled out some papers. The settlement money came through. We thought, maybe, we could do something good with it. The proposal laid out a foundation, a network to help other victims of romance fraud. Legal support, counseling, emergency funds. All the things we'd wished we'd had. We need someone to run it, Michelle said, looking at Lily. Someone who understands both sides of the story. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she read the details. I don't know if I'm qualified. You are, I said quietly. Because you found the strength to walk away. The coffee shop door opened again. Tom walked in, his black eye long-heeled. He'd been coming around more often lately, bringing dinner or fixing things around the house. Neither of us had put a name to it yet, but something was growing there, slow and careful. Ladies, he nodded to the group. Mind if I steal Maggie for a minute? Outside, the spring air carried the scent of new beginnings. Tom handed me an envelope. It came today, he said. Thought you'd want to see it. Inside was a letter from Jake, postmarked from prison. My hands shook as I read. Maggie, I've had time to think. About patterns, choices, the lies we tell ourselves. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But I want you to know you were right. About everything. Especially about Lily. Take care of her. She's lucky to have a mother who sees clearly what love really means. James. You okay? Tom asked. I looked through the window at Lily, animated now as she discussed plans for the foundation. At Angela, Sarah, and Michelle, who'd turned their pain into purpose. At my own reflection, no longer haunted by fear. You know what's strange? I folded the letter carefully. I thought catching him would feel like victory. But this, watching Lily heal, seeing these women support each other, this feels more like justice. Tom's hand found mine. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. Mom. Lily appeared in the doorway. We need your input on something. Inside, the women had spread out budget proposals and outreach plans. They were building something new from the ashes of their shared trauma. We're thinking of calling it Clearsight, Lily explained. Because that's what saved us all in the end. Being able to see through the lies, see what really matters. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The naive girl who'd shown up married on my doorstep was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd faced her mistakes and chosen to grow from them. What do you think? She asked. I squeezed her hand. It's exactly what we need. As we worked into the evening, planning and dreaming, I realized something. Jake had tried to destroy us. But he'd accidentally created something stronger. A network of women who refused to be victims. A daughter who'd found her purpose. And a mother who'd learned that protection sometimes means letting go. The coffee shop lights dimmed, signaling closing time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories, new women needing help. But for now, in this moment, we were exactly where we needed to be. Clear-sighted, at last. I was 7 when my father vanished. Not the dramatic kind of vanishing you see in movies, with ransom notes or signs of struggle. He just disappeared. One ordinary Tuesday morning, his truck was found abandoned on the side of Highway 16, keys still in the ignition. His wallet sitting on the passenger seat. That's all we got, an empty truck and a lifetime of questions. My name is Harper, and that morning changed everything. I remember standing in our small living room, clutching my teddy bear while 2 police officers spoke to my mother in hushed tones. Mom's face remained composed, but her hands kept fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd never seen before. "Mrs. Quinn will keep investigating, but right now there's no evidence of foul play," one officer said, his notepad already halfway into his pocket. The other one kept glancing at me with that awful mix of pity and discomfort adults get around children in crisis. Mom nodded mechanically, thanking them as they left. The moment the door closed, she slid down against it, silent tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat next to her and held her hand. We stayed like that for what felt like hours. The next few weeks were a blur of whispered phone calls and concerned neighbors bringing casseroles we barely touched. Mom threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts at the diner and starting a cleaning job on weekends. I learned to pack my own lunch and set my alarm clock. "Your mother's so strong," people would say, their voices dripping with sympathy. But I saw how she'd pause sometimes, staring at Dad's coffee mug still hanging on its hook in the kitchen. Or how she'd wake up in the middle of the night to check his side of the closet, as if his clothes might have mysteriously reappeared. One evening, about 3 months after he disappeared, I found Mom in the garage, sitting in Dad's old workshop. She was holding his favorite wrench, running her fingers over the worn handle. "Harper, sweetie," she said, noticing me hovering in the doorway. "Come here." She patted the workbench beside her, and I climbed up. "You know your daddy loved us very much, right?" I nodded, even though I wasn't so sure anymore. "If he loved us, why didn't he come back?" "Sometimes." Mom paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes people leave, and we might never know why. But that doesn't mean it's our fault. You understand." I didn't, not really, but I nodded again because it seemed like what she needed. "We're going to be okay," she said more to herself than to me. "We've got each other, and that's what matters." That night, I overheard her on the phone with Aunt Sarah. "The bank called again," Mom whispered. "I don't know how much longer I can keep up with the mortgage. And these medical bills from his last checkup. I had no idea he'd canceled his life insurance." I lay in bed, clutching my teddy bear tighter, trying to make sense of it all. Dad had always seemed so happy, so present. He'd swing me around in the backyard, calling me his little monkey. He'd spend hours teaching me about tools in his workshop, letting me hold the flashlight while he fixed things. How could someone just walk away from their life without a trace? Years later, I'd learned that the police found something else in his truck that day, something they didn't tell us about initially. A receipt from a gas station in Oregon, dated 2 days after he disappeared. He hadn't vanished into thin air after all. He'd chosen to leave. But that morning, watching those police officers walk away, I was just a confused 7-year-old girl, unaware that this was only the beginning of a pattern that would shape my entire life. People leaving, secrets unraveling, and the constant struggle to keep myself from falling apart in the aftermath. 11 years passed in a blur of late-night study sessions, part-time jobs, and my mother's unwavering determination to give me a normal life. But nothing prepares you for hearing the word cancer in a sterile doctor's office. Watching your mother's face as she processes the news with the same quiet strength she showed the day Dad left. I was 18. Fresh out of high school and ready to start college on a scholarship when Mom's persistent cough turned into something more sinister. Stage 3 lung cancer. She'd never even smoked. "It's just another bump in the road, honey," Mom said, squeezing my hand as we left the hospital. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "We've handled worse. But this was different." The medical bills started piling up faster than the autumn leaves in our yard. I'd come home from my evening shift at the campus coffee shop to find Mom hunched over spreadsheets at the kitchen table, calculator in hand, trying to make impossible numbers work. "You should defer college for a year," she suggested one evening, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. The chemotherapy had taken her hair, but not her spirit. Focus on work, save some money. I shook my head, already knowing where this conversation was heading. Not happening. I can handle both. Harper. Mom, please. I pulled out the chair next to her, sitting down. You've spent the last 11 years making sure I had every opportunity possible. Don't ask me to give up now. She started crying then, silent tears rolling down her hollow cheeks. I'm supposed to take care of you, not the other way around. I grabbed her hand, noticing how thin her fingers had become. We take care of each other. That's what we do. The next few months became a brutal routine. Classes in the morning, hospital visits in the afternoon, work in the evening, and studying late into the night. I learned to function on 4 hours of sleep and vending machine coffee. My scholarship covered tuition, but everything else, the medical bills, the mortgage, the groceries, came down to careful juggling and prayer. Then came the night that changed everything. I was closing up the coffee shop when my phone rang. Mom had collapsed at home. Our elderly neighbor found her when she went to drop off some soup. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I ran toward her room. The doctor's words blurred together. Complications, pneumonia, critical condition. I stood there, watching the machines breathe for her, remembering all the times she'd been strong for me. You should rest, a nurse said gently, touching my arm. She's stable for now. I shook my head. I need to be here when she wakes up. But she didn't wake up. 3 days later, I had to make the decision no 18-year-old should have to make. The doctor explained that her organs were failing, that the cancer had spread more aggressively than they'd thought, that keeping her on life support would only prolong the inevitable. She left this for you, the nurse said, handing me an envelope after it was over. Inside was a letter, written in Mom's careful handwriting. My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry I couldn't be stronger for you. But you need to know something. You were never the one who needed to be strong. You were my strength all along. Every time I wanted to give up, every time the weight felt too heavy, I'd look at you and find the courage to keep going. Don't let this break you. Don't let anything break you. You're a Quinn woman, and we bend but never break. All my love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my pocket. The world felt impossibly large and empty, but I could still hear Mom's voice in my head. We bend but never break. That night, sitting alone in our too-quiet house, I made 2 promises to myself. First, I would finish college, no matter what it took. And second, I would never let anyone make me feel as helpless as I felt in that hospital corridor. Little did I know, both these promises would be tested sooner than I expected. I met Ryan in my advanced economics class 6 months after Mom died. He sat next to me on a rainy Tuesday, offered me a coffee, and somehow made me laugh for the first time since the funeral. It wasn't love at first sight, more like recognition. Here was someone else who understood what it meant to navigate life's unexpected turns. You're taking 18 credits and working 2 jobs? He asked one evening as we studied in the library. That's insane, Harper. I shrugged, highlighting another passage in my textbook. Not much choice. The scholarship only covers tuition. There's always a choice. He closed my book, forcing me to look at him. Let me help. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's... He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. It's me caring about someone who's working herself to death. That's when my scholarship renewal letter arrived. Or rather, the rejection letter. I stood in my tiny studio apartment, reading and rereading the words until they blurred together. Without the scholarship, there was no way I could continue. All of Mom's sacrifices, all my promises, they'd amount to nothing. Move in with me, Ryan said when I told him. We were sitting in his car outside my apartment, rain drumming on the roof. My roommate's graduating early. You can take his room, split the rent. It's cheaper than this place. Ryan, just listen, he interrupted. You're brilliant, Harper. You're going to graduate and become some hotshot financial analyst, and I'll get to say I knew you when. But you can't do it if you're sleeping 3 hours a night and living on ramen. I stared out the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Why are you doing this? Because someone should. His voice softened. Because you've been carrying everything alone for so long, you've forgotten you don't have to. 2 weeks later, I moved into Ryan's apartment. It was bigger than mine, closer to campus, and somehow everything started feeling manageable. Ryan cooked while I studied. We split the bills. For the first time since Mom died, I felt like I could breathe. But then came the night that changed everything. I was working late at my campus job when Ryan called, panic in his voice. "Harper, we need you." There's been an accident. I found him in the emergency room, blood on his shirt, looking shell-shocked. "It's my dad," he explained. "Heart attack. Mom's with him now." I stayed with Ryan all night, watching him pace the waiting room, making coffee runs, holding his hand when the doctor finally came out. His father survived, but barely. That's when I met Evelyn Mitchell for the first time. She swept into the waiting room like a hurricane in designer clothes, her mascara perfectly intact despite the circumstances. Her eyes landed on our joined hands, then on my worn jeans and coffee-stained sweater. "You must be Harper," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Ryan's friend." "Girlfriend," Ryan corrected, squeezing my hand. "She's been here all night, Mom." "How sweet." Her tone suggested it was anything but. "Richard's asking for you, darling." "Family only right now." I felt Ryan tense beside me. "Harper is family." "Of course she is." Evelyn's smile turned sharp. "But perhaps she should go home and change? We wouldn't want the hospital staff thinking we're..." Well, the implication hung in the air. I stood up, gathering my things. But Ryan caught my arm. "Stay," he whispered. "Please." I looked at him, then at Evelyn, who was watching us with calculated interest. In that moment, I saw something in her eyes that made my stomach turn, a flash of the same controlling nature that had driven my father away, that had made my mother doubt herself for years. "It's okay," I said, squeezing Ryan's hand. "Go be with your dad. I'll come back later." As I walked out of the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just glimpsed my future, a future where every decision, every moment would be scrutinized and judged by Evelyn Mitchell. I should have listened to that instinct. Should have run while I still could. But I was too focused on not losing another person I loved to see the warning signs right in front of me. Ryan proposed on graduation day, right after we received our diplomas. It wasn't a grand gesture, just us sitting on the steps of the economics building where we first met. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly what I would have chosen myself. "I know it's not much," he said, looking nervous. "But I promise, Harper, I'll spend my life making sure you never feel alone again." I said yes without hesitation. After 2 years together, Ryan felt like home. Steady, reliable, everything my father wasn't. We planned a small wedding, something we could afford on our entry-level salaries. That's when Evelyn stepped in. "Darling," she said during what was supposed to be a casual dinner at her house, "you simply can't get married at the courthouse. What would everyone think?" Ryan squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom, we've talked about this. We want something simple." "Simple doesn't mean cheap." She sipped her wine, eyes fixed on me. "Unless, of course, Harper's uncomfortable with accepting help from family." I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. "We appreciate the offer, but I insist." Her tone left no room for argument. "Consider it my wedding gift. After all, you're going to be a Mitchell now." Ryan beamed, missing the way his mother's words made me flinch. I wasn't becoming a Mitchell. I was still a Quinn, my mother's daughter. But I stayed quiet, not wanting to spoil his happiness. The wedding spiraled into something unrecognizable. Evelyn took over, booking an expensive venue, ordering custom everything. Each time I tried to object, she'd already paid for something else, making it impossible to back out without seeming ungrateful. The night before the wedding, I found myself alone in the bridal suite, staring at my reflection. The dress was beautiful, and completely not me. Everything about this wedding felt like a performance for Evelyn's social circle. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "You okay? You seemed off at the rehearsal dinner." I started typing "I'm fine," but deleted it. Instead, I wrote, "Remember when we were kids and promised to tell each other the truth, no matter what?" Her response came quickly. "What's really going on, Harper?" Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Evelyn swept in, carrying a small box. "I have something for you," she said, opening it to reveal a pearl necklace. It's been in the Mitchell family for generations. Every bride has worn it. The pearls gleamed in the soft light, beautiful and suffocating. I was planning to wear my mother's locket. Evelyn's smile tightened. Oh, sweetie, that old thing? This is your chance to start fresh, to become part of a real family. The words hit like a physical blow. I had a real family. Of course you did. Her tone was patronizing. But let's be honest. A father who abandoned you, a mother who couldn't even afford proper health care. Ryan's offering you something better. Don't cling to the past. I stood up, hands shaking. My mother worked herself to death to give me a future. Don't you dare. And now you have one, she interrupted smoothly. Thanks to my son. Just remember that. After she left, I sat on the floor, clutching my mother's locket. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger in her expensive dress and perfect makeup. Mom's words echoed in my head, "Don't let anything break you." My phone buzzed again. "Zoe, whatever you decide, I've got your back." I took a deep breath and made a decision. I couldn't stop this wedding without hurting Ryan, but I could hold on to who I was. Tomorrow, I would walk down the aisle wearing my mother's locket, not Evelyn's pearls. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt like drawing a line in the sand. What I didn't know then was that this moment, this choice between my identity and Evelyn's vision of who I should be, was just the beginning of a war I wasn't prepared to fight. 3 years into our marriage, the cracks started showing. While my career in financial analysis took off, Ryan seemed content working retail at the mall, picking up occasional shifts and spending more time at his mother's house than ours. I got the promotion, I announced over dinner one night, unable to contain my excitement. Senior analyst position, with a significant raise. Ryan pushed his food around his plate. That's great. Great? Ryan, this is huge. We can finally start saving for. Mom thinks we should look at houses in Oakwood Heights, he interrupted, not meeting my eyes. Sit down, my faculty. Oakwood Heights was where Evelyn lived, all massive houses and manicured lawns. We can't afford Oakwood Heights. With your new salary, even with the raise, those houses are way beyond our means. I tried keeping my voice level. Besides, our apartment is fine. Fine isn't good enough anymore. He finally looked up. Mom says people are starting to talk. People? You mean your mother's country club friends. The words came out sharper than intended. Since when do we care what they think? Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Evelyn, right on cue. I watched him answer, watched his posture change as he spoke to her. When had my confident, supportive husband become this person who couldn't make a decision without his mother's input? The next day, I came home to find Ryan and Evelyn in our living room, surrounded by real estate brochures. Harper, darling. Evelyn's smile was razor sharp. I found the perfect house for you. 5 bedrooms, pool, guest house, room to grow. We don't need 5 bedrooms. I dropped my briefcase, exhausted from a day of meetings. And we definitely don't need a guest house. Don't be silly. Every Mitchell lives in Oakwood Heights. It's tradition. I'm not. I caught myself seeing Ryan's pleading look. We need to discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Ryan said, his voice taking on that familiar tone he used when parroting his mother's words. I already put in an offer. The room went silent. You what? It's a seller's market, Evelyn chimed in. We had to move quickly. Don't worry about the down payment. I'm handling it. My hands started shaking. Ryan, can we talk? Alone. In our bedroom, I tried staying calm. You made an offer on a house without discussing it with me? Mom says. I don't care what your mother says. The words exploded out of me. This is our life, our finances. You can't just. What's the problem? He threw his hands up. You got this big promotion, we're moving up in the world. Isn't this what you wanted? What I wanted, I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. What I wanted was a partner who could make decisions with me, not for me. What I wanted was to build our life together, not live the life your mother designed. You're being dramatic. Mom's just trying to help. Help. I pulled out my laptop, opened our banking app. Look at this. Really look. Even with my raise, that house would eat up everything we make. One emergency and we'd be underwater. Mom said she'd help if. And there it is. I closed the laptop. More strings for your mother to pull. When did you stop being the man I married and become her puppet? His face hardened. At least my mother's still around to help. The words hit like a physical blow. I stepped back, remembering my mother's last days, how she'd fought to give me independence, not control. Your mother's not helping, Ryan. She's buying your obedience. And apparently, it's pretty cheap. I grabbed my keys and jacket, needing to escape before I said something unforgivable. As I passed the living room, Evelyn called out, "Don't be difficult, dear. This is for the best." I paused at the door, thinking of all the times my mother had taught me to stand my ground. No, Evelyn. This is for your best. And that's not the same thing at all. Walking to my car, I called Zoe. "Remember when you said you had a spare room if I ever needed it?" "Always," she answered without hesitation. "How soon?" I looked back at our apartment, where Ryan stood watching from the window. "I don't know yet. But soon." The call came at 3 in the morning. Richard Mitchell had suffered another heart attack, worse than the first. I woke to find Ryan already dressed, keys in hand. "I have to go," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Dad needs me." I nodded, still half asleep. "Of course. Let me get dressed." "No." His voice was firm. "I need to do this alone." That was 6 months ago. Now I stood in our empty house, the house I'd warned him we couldn't afford, staring at another past due notice. Ryan had quit his job to help care for his father, leaving me to shoulder our mounting debts alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Family dinner tonight." No excuses. Family dinner. Her new Sunday tradition, where she'd spend hours listing everything Ryan had sacrificed for his father, while pointedly ignoring the fact that I was working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat. "I can't make it," I texted back. "Deadline at work." Her response was immediate. "Ryan needs your support. Don't be selfish." Selfish. The word echoed in my head as I drove to their house that evening. The same words she'd used when I suggested Ryan look for part-time work. When I questioned her decision to hire round-the-clock nurses we couldn't afford, when I dared to mention our growing credit card debt. Ryan met me at the door, looking more like his mother's son than my husband. "You're late." "Traffic." I followed him inside, where Evelyn was holding court in the living room, surrounded by medical bills and insurance forms. "Harper, darling." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We need to discuss the house." "What about it?" "Well," she paused, examining her manicure. "Given the circumstances, it might be best to sell it." The room tilted slightly. "Sell our house." "Ryan needs to be here full-time," she continued. "And since you're so concerned about money." "I'm concerned about surviving," I corrected. "We're drowning in debt because..." "Because you lack faith," she interrupted. "Family takes care of family. Ryan understands that." I looked at my husband, but he was studying the carpet. "Ryan? Is this what you want?" "It makes sense," he mumbled. "Dad needs me here." "And what about what I need?" The words came out before I could stop them. "I've been killing myself trying to keep us above water while you..." "While I what?" His head snapped up. "While I take care of my dying father. I'm sorry we can't all be cold and practical like you." The accusation hit like a slap. "Cold?" "I watched my mother die alone because we couldn't afford proper care. Don't you dare call me cold." "That's different," Evelyn interjected smoothly. "We're not going to abandon Richard the way your father abandoned." "Stop." My voice shook. "Just stop." I walked to the window, watching the expensive landscaping blur through sudden tears. Behind me, I heard Ryan sigh. "Maybe Mom's right," he said quietly. "Maybe we should sell the house. You could get an apartment closer to work, and I could stay here." And there it was. The final thread snapping. "You've already moved out, haven't you?" I turned to face him. "Your clothes, your things, they're all here." His silence was answer enough. "Harper," Evelyn started, but I held up a hand. "No. You win, Evelyn. You finally have him exactly where you want him. Dependent, compliant, just like when he was a child." I pulled my house keys from my purse. "Let them fall onto the coffee table." "But I won't stay to watch." "Don't be dramatic," Ryan protested. "This is temporary." "No, it's not." I met his eyes one last time. "This is who you choose to be. And I choose not to be part of it." Walking out of that house felt like leaving my mother's hospital room all over again. That same hollow ache. That same knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. But this time, the person I was losing had chosen to leave. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from my bank. Insufficient funds for mortgage payment. Final notice. I started the engine, wondering how I'd ended up here, homeless, nearly bankrupt, and completely alone. Again. Richard Mitchell died on a Tuesday, exactly like my father had disappeared. But this time, I wasn't a helpless child watching my world collapse. I was in my office when Ryan's text arrived. Dad's gone. Need you home now. Home. I stared at the word, wondering if he meant our house or his mother's. It didn't matter. I'd lost both. I found them in the kitchen of our house, Ryan and Evelyn huddled over papers spread across the counter I'd picked out 3 years ago. They didn't hear me come in. The house should sell quickly, Evelyn was saying. The market's hot, and with your father's life insurance. What house? My voice made them both jump. Our house. Ryan at least had the decency to look guilty. Harper, I can explain. Explain what? How you're selling our house without telling me. Or how you're counting money your father hasn't even been dead a day. Don't be crude, Evelyn snapped. We're being practical. Something you claim to understand. I moved closer, scanning the papers. Property listings, bank statements, and is that my signature? Ryan paled. I had to, the bank needed. You forged my signature? The room tilted dangerously. On what? Just some paperwork to get the sale moving. Evelyn waved dismissively. Really, Harper, you're making this more dramatic than necessary. Get out. My voice was surprisingly steady. Both of you, get out of my house. Your house. Evelyn laughed. Darling, who do you think has been making the payments these past 6 months? I have. Every single one. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. Want to see the transfers? The overtime hours? The credit card debt I took on while your son played dutiful caretaker. Mom's been helping, Ryan protested. She's been lying. I met Evelyn's eyes. Haven't you? There's no life insurance, is there? The slight twitch in her perfectly composed face told me everything. Richard canceled it years ago. I continued, watching her mask slip. Just like my father did. You've been promising Ryan money that doesn't exist. How dare you? I work in financial analysis, remember? The job you thought was beneath your precious son? I know how to read between the lines. I turned to Ryan. She's broke. Has been for years. All those country club memberships, designer clothes, it's all smoke and mirrors. That's ridiculous, Ryan stammered. Mom. But Evelyn's silence was damning. Get out, I repeated. You have 30 minutes to take what's yours. After that, I'm calling the police about the forgery. You wouldn't, Evelyn hissed. I pulled out my mother's locket, the one I'd worn instead of Evelyn's pearls at my wedding. My mother taught me to stand my ground. Your son might have forgotten who he is, but I haven't forgotten who I am. Ryan, Evelyn turned to her son. Are you going to let her speak to me this way? I watched my husband, the boy who'd offered me coffee on a rainy Tuesday, the man who'd promised to never let me feel alone, crumble under his mother's gaze. We should go, he mumbled. If you walk out that door, I said quietly, don't come back. He paused, hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the Ryan I'd fallen in love with. Then Evelyn touched his arm, and it vanished. I'm sorry, he whispered and followed his mother out. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by their abandoned papers, feeling an odd sense of déjà vu. Once again, I was watching someone choose to leave. But this time, I wasn't the scared little girl clutching a teddy bear. This time, I was choosing to. My phone buzzed, a text from Zoe. You okay? I looked around the kitchen at the life Ryan and I had built and the ruins Evelyn had made of it. No, I typed back. But I will be. Then I started gathering evidence for my lawyer. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. After all, I was my mother's daughter, and she taught me how to fight back. 1 year later, I was sorting through the last box from my old house when my phone lit up with a familiar number. Ryan. I watched it ring, remembering the last time I'd seen him in court 6 months ago, when the judge ordered him and Evelyn to repay the money they'd taken from my accounts. You should answer it, Zoe said from her spot on my new couch. After everything, she'd helped me find this small but sunny apartment across town. Get closure or whatever. I picked up on the final ring. Hello. Harper. Ryan's voice was rough, unfamiliar. I need your help. Of course he did. The lawsuit had revealed the extent of Evelyn's deception. Decades of hidden debt, mortgages on mortgages. Credit cards maxed out to maintain their facade of wealth. Last I'd heard, they'd lost everything. "I'm sorry," I said, surprising myself by meaning it. "But I can't. Please. Moms. She's not handling things well. We're staying in this motel, and—" "Stop." I closed my eyes, remembering my mother's voice. "We bend but never break. You made your choice, Ryan. I know. I know I messed up. But you're the only one who understands about family." "No," I interrupted. "I understand about strength. About standing on your own 2 feet. That's what real family taught me." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he whispered, "I miss you." "I miss who you were," I replied. "But that person's gone." After hanging up, I reached into the box I'd been sorting, the last one from my old life. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was my mother's jewelry box. I'd avoided opening it since her death, but something compelled me now. Among the modest pieces she'd owned, I found an envelope I'd never seen before. Inside was a letter, dated just weeks before she died. "My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, you've finally decided to face what's in this box. You always were brave like that, facing things head-on, even when it hurt. I need to tell you something about your father." The police found more than just that receipt from Oregon. They found letters, dozens of them, to another family he'd abandoned before us. It seems running away was his pattern. But that's not your pattern, Harper. You stay. You fight. You build something real from the ruins others leave behind. Whatever life throws at you, remember, your worth isn't measured by who stays or goes. It's measured by how you carry yourself through the storm. All my love, Mom. I traced her handwriting, feeling pieces click into place. My father hadn't just abandoned us. We were part of a pattern, a chain of destruction he'd left in his wake. But Mom had broken that pattern by staying, by showing me a different kind of strength. "You okay?" Zoe asked, watching me carefully. I looked around my new apartment, smaller than my old house, but paid for with honest work. On the wall hung my financial analyst certification, earned while rebuilding my credit after Ryan's betrayal. The coffee table held brochures for the financial literacy program I'd started, helping other women escape financially abusive relationships. "Yeah," I said, tucking Mom's letter into my journal. "I really am." My phone buzzed again, Ryan's number. This time, I didn't hesitate. Block contact. Some might call it revenge, letting Ryan and Evelyn face the consequences of their choices. But sitting there, surrounded by the life I'd built from scratch, I realized it wasn't about revenge at all. It was about breaking patterns, the pattern of abandonment my father set, the pattern of control Evelyn wielded, the pattern of dependency Ryan chose. I picked up my mother's locket, the one I'd worn at my wedding, and fastened it around my neck. Inside were 2 pictures now, Mom on one side, and on the other, a photo of me at my program's first graduation ceremony, helping other women find their strength. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better.
The message from my father arrived while I was in the middle of coaching 20 teenagers through their first competitive gaming tournament. My phone buzzed with his text. "Family announcement this weekend. Your presence is required." My name is Avery, and that single message managed to derail my entire week. I hadn't been home in months. Not since the last disastrous family dinner where my stepmother Karen had spent the entire evening showcasing my half-sister Claire's latest achievements while pointedly ignoring mine. "Miss Collins." One of my students waved frantically from their gaming station. "The server's acting weird again." I pocketed my phone, pushing aside the knot forming in my stomach. "Coming, Tommy." And remember, in tournament play, we troubleshoot first, panic second. The rest of the day passed in a blur of technical issues and coaching sessions. By closing time, my phone had 3 missed calls from my father and another text. "This is important, Avery. Don't skip out like last time." That night, I sat cross-legged on my couch, staring at my phone while my fiancé Ethan cooked dinner in our small kitchen. "You're doing that thing again," he said, stirring something that smelled amazing. "The one where you overthink everything until your brain explodes." "I don't overthink," I muttered, then caught his knowing look. "Okay, fine. But Dad never demands family meetings. Something's up. Maybe Claire finally learned how to tie her shoes without help, Ethan joked, then sobered when I didn't laugh. Sorry. Low blow. I sighed, remembering the last time I'd seen my younger half-sister. Claire had spent the entire evening making subtle digs about my little gaming club, and how it must be so fulfilling to play with other people's children since you can't have any of your own. That particular barb still stung. I should go, I said finally. If only to stop Dad from sending the National Guard after me. The drive to my childhood home that weekend felt longer than usual. Each mile marker brought back memories of growing up there after my mom died, of my grandmother Helen raising me while Dad was deployed, Claire's arrival when I was 12, and her mother Karen's immediate campaign to remake our family in her image. I pulled into the circular driveway, noting Claire's shiny new Mercedes parked in my usual spot. Of course. Dad opened the door before I could knock. You're late. Hello to you too, I said, accepting his awkward hug. He smelled the same as always, Old Spice and coffee. Some things never changed. The living room was exactly as I remembered, down to the family photos on the wall. I noticed with a twinge that Grandmother Helen's portrait had been moved to a less prominent spot. Claire sat in Helen's old armchair like she owned it, Karen perched on the armrest beside her. They both wore matching expressions of barely concealed satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Now that we're all here, Dad cleared his throat, Claire has some news. My sister's hand drifted to her stomach in a gesture that made my heart sink before she even opened her mouth. I'm pregnant, Claire announced, her smile sharp as a knife. You're going to be an aunt, Avery. Isn't that wonderful? Now you'll finally get to experience what it's like to have a baby in the family, even if it's not quite the same as having your own. The room went silent. I felt the familiar sting of tears threatening to form but forced them back. Claire's words hung in the air like poison, perfectly crafted to hit where it hurt most. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We thought you should hear it in person. Family first, right? I managed a tight smile, even as my fingers curled into fists at my sides. Congratulations, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. As I walked out onto the porch, I heard Karen's voice drift through the open window. She's always been dramatic. Don't let her ruin your moment, sweetheart. I leaned against the railing, letting the cool evening air clear my head. Something in me had shifted, hardened. This wasn't just about the baby announcement. This was about years of subtle cruelty, of calculated jabs and manufactured competitions. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. You okay? I wasn't. But I would be. 'Cause for the first time in my life, I was done playing nice. I didn't expect Dad to follow me onto the porch, but there he was, closing the screen door behind him with that familiar, careful quietness, the same way he used to check on me after Mom died. Your grandmother used to stand right there, he said, gesturing to where I was leaning against the railing. Watching storms roll in. I remember. I didn't add that I also remembered how Helen was the only one who stood up to Karen when she tried to redecorate the entire house, claiming the porch furniture was too country. The wicker chairs were still here, a small victory in a war of attrition. Karen's organizing a baby shower next month, Dad said, his voice carefully neutral. She wants to do it here. Course she did. The same house where Helen had raised me, where I'd spent countless hours reading in the window seat that Karen had later converted into a display case for Claire's cheerleading trophies. You don't have to come, he added quickly. Don't I? I turned to face him. Won't it look bad if the aunt doesn't show up? Won't Karen have something to say about that? He flinched. Avery. The screen door creaked open and Claire waddled out, one hand on her barely visible bump. Daddy, Mom wants to know if you'll grab more wine from the cellar. The good stuff, not the cheap bottles Avery brought last time. I hadn't brought any wine last time. Claire knew that. Sure, princess. Dad disappeared inside, leaving us alone. Claire's sweet smile dropped the instant he was gone. You could at least pretend to be happy for me." "I am happy for you," I lied. "Thrilled, even." "Really?" "Because you stormed out pretty quickly after my announcement. I needed air." "You needed attention," she corrected, moving closer. "Just like always. Poor infertile Avery can't stand someone else being the center of attention for once." My nails dug into my palms. "Is that what you think this is about?" "I think it's about what everything's always been about with you. Jealousy." She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You're jealous that I can have what you can't. That I'm giving Dad his first grandchild. That Mom loves me more than—" "Karen isn't my mother," I cut in. "And Helen left me the house." Claire's face went white. "What?" I hadn't meant to say it. The paperwork had arrived last week, Helen's final gift, held in trust until my 28th birthday. I'd been waiting for the right time to tell everyone, but Claire's smug superiority had cracked something in me. "The house is mine," I said, the words tasting like victory. "Grandmother Helen left it to me in her will. I get full ownership next month." Claire's hands trembled. "You're lying." "Ask Dad. He's known for years." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "So, maybe you should rethink having your baby shower here." "Wouldn't want to impose." The screen door slammed open. Karen stood there, her face twisted with rage. "I heard everything," she hissed. "How dare you?" "How dare I what?" "Inherit my grandmother's house. Claire is pregnant. This is her moment, and you're trying to ruin it with your spiteful little power play." "Karen." Dad appeared behind her, holding a wine bottle. "What's going on?" "Your daughter is trying to kick us out of our home." "That's not what I said," I protested, but Claire was already crying, her hands protectively covering her stomach. "The stress isn't good for the baby," she sobbed. "She's trying to hurt my baby." Dad looked between us, lost. "Avery, maybe we should discuss this another time." "Of course," I said quietly. "Take care of your pregnant daughter. It's what you do best." I walked to my car, ignoring Karen's continued accusations and Dad's weak attempts to call me back. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Claire in my rearview mirror. She wasn't crying anymore. Instead, she was watching me leave with the same calculating expression she'd worn when she'd announced her pregnancy. This wasn't over. We both knew it. But for the first time, I had something she wanted. And I intended to use it. The message that broke me came from Sarah, my oldest student's mother, 3 days after the family dinner. She wanted to discuss some concerns about my mentorship program. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, expecting questions about tournament schedules or equipment fees. I was wrong. "I heard some disturbing things," Sarah said, stirring her untouched latte. "About your situation." My stomach dropped. "My situation?" "Your sister Claire reached out to several parents. She mentioned your condition might affect your ability to relate to children properly." Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes. "She suggested we might want to consider other programs." The coffee shop's ambient chatter faded to white noise. Claire hadn't just attacked me personally, she'd gone after my business, my students, everything I'd built. "My infertility has nothing to do with my ability to teach," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "Tommy's tournament rankings have improved by 30% since he started with us." "I know, but..." "But what?" "Claire's pregnant, so suddenly she's an expert on children?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "She mentioned she's starting her own youth program. Something more traditional, less competitive." Of course she was. Claire had never shown any interest in gaming or coaching before, but now that she knew it mattered to me. I stood up, nearly knocking over my chair. "Excuse me. I need to make a call." Sighed, I pressed my forehead against the cool brick wall and dialed Claire's number. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. "Hello, sister dear. How are you coping with the house news?" Cut the act, I snapped. I know what you're doing. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm just looking out for children's best interests. After all, what would our grandmother think about you using her house to run a business teaching kids to waste their lives playing games? Don't you dare bring Helen into this. Why not? She's the reason you think you're better than everyone else. Perfect Avery, Helen's favorite, too good for family now that she has her precious inheritance. Is that what this is about? You're sabotaging my business because you're jealous of a house? Claire's laugh was bitter. I'm protecting vulnerable children from someone who can't possibly understand what it means to be a mother. You should thank me, really. Now you won't have to pretend anymore. I ended the call before I could say something I'd regret. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from Claire. By the way, I've already got 5 of your students' parents interested in my new program. Funny how quickly they change their minds when they learn the truth about you. I slumped against the wall, fighting back tears. Years of work, of building trust with these families, and Claire was destroying it all with a few well-placed words. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. Hey, you okay? Your afternoon class is starting soon. Class. I'd almost forgotten. I had 6 teenagers waiting to learn advanced strategy techniques, kids who trusted me, who'd improved under my guidance despite my condition. I straightened up, wiping my eyes. Claire wanted to play dirty? Fine. But she'd forgotten something important. I'd learned strategy from the best. And Helen hadn't just left me a house. She'd left me her entire gaming collection, including journals full of tournament notes dating back decades. I texted Ethan back. I'm good. Actually, I have an idea. Remember that charity tournament we talked about? The one you said was too ambitious? Things change. How fast can you set up a live stream event? And can you get your developer friends involved? Give me 48 hours. What are you planning? I smiled, thinking of Claire's smug face when she thought she'd won. Teaching my sister a lesson about games. And family. And why you should never underestimate someone just because they can't have children. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in days. Claire thought she could use my infertility against me. She was about to learn that some battles aren't won by having the right biology, they're won by having the right strategy. And I'd been strategizing my whole life. I found the adoption pamphlets while cleaning up after dinner. Ethan had hidden them under a stack of gaming magazines, but they spilled across the kitchen counter when I moved them, glossy pages full of smiling families and promises of new beginnings. I was going to bring it up differently, Ethan said from the doorway, making me jump. Maybe over wine. Or after the charity tournament. My fingers traced the edge of a pamphlet. How long have you been thinking about this? Since before Claire's announcement. He moved closer, careful, like I might bolt. I know the timing seems reactive, but what? You thought now would be perfect? While my sister is actively trying to destroy everything I've built because she thinks I'm unfit to be around children? That's exactly why we should consider it. Ethan picked up one of the pamphlets. To prove her wrong. To show everyone that family isn't about biology or pregnancy announcements. It's about love and choice. My phone buzzed. Another parent withdrawing from the program. 3rd one this week. Claire would use it against us, I said quietly. She'd say we're only doing it to compete with her pregnancy. To steal her spotlight. Since when do you care what Claire thinks? Since she started poisoning my entire life. The words burst out louder than intended. She's turning everyone against me, Ethan. Parents, Dad, even my own students are starting to doubt me. And now you want to add adoption scrutiny to that mix? I want to build a future with you, he said. One that isn't defined by what Claire does or doesn't do. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. Claire's having complications. Doctor ordered bed rest. She's staying at the house. Thought you should know. Of course she was staying at the house. My house. The one Helen left to me. She's moving in, I said, showing Ethan the message. She's actually moving into the house before I can even claim it. Can she do that? Dad's still technically the executor until my birthday next month. He can let anyone stay there he wants. I laughed, the sound hollow. Want to bet she'll have redecorated my old room for the nursery before I get the keys? Ethan was quiet for a moment then. Maybe we should move. What? After the tournament. After you get the house. We could sell it, move somewhere Claire can't reach us. Start fresh, maybe look into adoption agencies in another state. Run away, you mean? I stared at the pamphlets, at all those perfect families smiling up at me. Let Claire win. Let her have an empty victory while we build something real. Another text from Dad. Karen's organizing a baby shower here next week. Claire really wants you there. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I picked up one of the adoption pamphlets, really looking at it this time. A young couple played with their adopted daughter, their faces bright with genuine joy. No forced smiles, no calculated performances. Just family. Helen always said the house was meant to be a home, I said slowly. Not a weapon. What are you thinking? I reached for my laptop. I'm thinking it's time to change the game. Claire wants to play happy families? Fine. But first, we're going to show everyone what real family support looks like. I pulled up the charity tournament plans we'd been working on. What if we made it bigger? Not just gaming, a full community event. Supporting local adoption agencies, foster care programs. Using Claire's tactics against her? No. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Using my grandmother's strategy. She always said the best way to win isn't to tear others down, it's to build something so beautiful they can't ignore it. Ethan grinned. I love it when you get that look. What's the first move? I picked up my phone, ignoring Dad's text to compose a different message. This one to all my remaining students' parents. Invitation to a special announcement. Time to show you what our program is really about. Claire wanted war? I'd give her something better, hope. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find some for myself along the way. The lawyer's office felt too small for the 5 of us. Dad sat between Claire and me, while Karen hovered protectively behind Claire's chair. The inheritance paperwork lay unopened on Mr. Peterson's desk, but that wasn't why we were here. Let me understand this correctly, Mr. Peterson said, adjusting his glasses. Miss Collins, you're requesting an early transfer of property ownership due to unauthorized renovations? I placed my phone on his desk, playing the video Tommy's mom had sent me yesterday. The footage showed Karen directing workers at the house, supervising as they carried Helen's antique furniture out to a waiting truck. They're gutting my grandmother's home, I said. Without permission. We're preparing the nursery, Karen cut in. Richard approved it. Dad shifted uncomfortably. I didn't realize they were removing Helen's things. Of course you didn't. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. You never notice anything when it comes to Claire. Claire's hand moved protectively over her bump. The doctor said stress isn't good for the baby. And that old furniture was full of dust and that furniture was my inheritance. My voice cracked. Everything in that house meant something. Every piece had a story. Stories don't matter to a baby, Claire said softly, her eyes gleaming with false concern. But I understand why you're so attached. It must be hard knowing you'll never have a real family to pass these things down to. The room went silent. Even Karen looked shocked at Claire's cruelty. Miss Collins, Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Legally speaking, until your 28th birthday next month, your father retains executor rights. However, given the circumstances... My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Local news picked up the charity tournament story. They want to interview you about combining gaming with adoption awareness. Something clicked in my mind. I'd like to make a proposal, I said, sitting straighter. Dad, you want peace in the family. Claire, you want the nursery? Fine. Keep the house for now. Claire's triumphant smile lasted exactly 3 seconds. But I'm hosting my charity tournament there next week. A full media event highlighting local adoption services and foster care programs. After all, I met Claire's eyes. It's still legally Dad's house, and he always taught us about giving back to the community. Right, Dad? Dad's military posture returned, the way it always did when he was cornered. That seems reasonable. You can't be serious, Karen sputtered. Claire needs rest, not some noisy gaming circus. The event will be in the backyard, I said. Claire can rest upstairs. Unless there's some reason you don't want the community seeing inside the house? Claire's face went pale. She knew exactly what I was implying. If they refused, people would question why. Especially after Claire had spent weeks spreading rumors about my fitness to work with children. I think it's a wonderful idea, Mr. Peterson said, clearly enjoying the drama. Very much in keeping with Helen's philanthropic spirit. Fine, Claire snapped. Have your little event. But don't think this changes anything. That house will never be yours in the way that really matters. You'll never fill it with family the way I will. I stood up, gathering my things. You know what, Claire? You're right. I won't fill it with family, because family isn't about filling spaces. It's about building connections. Something Grandmother Helen tried to teach us, though clearly only one of us was listening. As I reached the door, Dad called out, Avery, wait! The event team will be there Monday to set up, I said without turning around. Try not to remove any more of Helen's memories before then. Outside, my hand shook as I texted Ethan. It's done. Plan B is go. His reply was immediate. You sure about this? Once we start, I looked back at the lawyer's office, where Claire was already playing the victim for Dad again. She thought she'd won by taking Helen's house. She had no idea that some victories came disguised as losses. I'm sure, I typed. Time to show everyone what real family looks like. And this time I had more than just games up my sleeve. I had truth. The charity tournament was supposed to be my moment of triumph. Instead, I stood frozen in Helen's backyard, now barely recognizable under Karen's garden party decorations, watching Claire steal even this from me. As someone who truly understands the importance of nurturing children, Claire was saying to the local news reporter, one hand resting on her visible bump, I'm excited to announce my own youth mentorship program, one that focuses on traditional values and real family connections. The camera panned to capture the crowd's approving nods. Several of my former students' parents stood among them, including Sarah, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. Of course, Claire continued, her voice dripping with false concern. We'll welcome all children, even those from alternative family structures. After all, everyone deserves guidance from someone who understands traditional family values. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight. We can still shut this down. It's your event, your grandmother's property. Actually, Karen stepped forward, brandishing a paper. We have something to share about that. She smiled at the reporter. Richard, dear, would you like to make the announcement? Dad emerged from the crowd, looking uncomfortable but determined. Given Claire's condition and her new community program, we've decided to transfer ownership of the house to her permanently. The paperwork was filed this morning. The world tilted sideways. You can't, I whispered, but the microphones picked it up. The inheritance was contingent on several factors, Karen cut in smoothly, including the property's continued use for family purposes. Richard and I agree that Claire's program better serves that intention. Claire's triumphant smile felt like a knife. We're keeping Helen's legacy alive the way she would have wanted, by nurturing future generations. Not through video games. I spotted Helen's chest set through the window, still sitting in its familiar spot. The one thing they hadn't packed away yet. My vision blurred. You want to talk about Helen's legacy? My voice shook. Let's talk about what she really wanted. Let's talk about the letter she left. Commotion near the house cut me off. Tommy, my youngest student, had slipped inside and was now running back out, Helen's chest set clutched in his arms. Miss Collins! I saved it before they could. He tripped. The antique chess set flew from his hands in slow motion. Pieces scattered across the patio like broken dreams. The hand-carved board splitting with a crack that felt like Helen's heart breaking all over again. This is exactly why children need proper supervision, Claire announced to the crowd. From people who understand. Shut up. The words came out raw. Just shut up, Claire. You didn't even know her. You spent every holiday at your mom's parents' house. You never sat with Helen, never learned her stories, never. But I'm giving her what she always wanted, Claire interrupted. A real family in her home. Children. A future. What can you offer except broken games and empty rooms? Cameras were still rolling. My students watched with wide eyes. Everything I'd built, everything I'd planned, lay shattered like the chess pieces at my feet. I think we're done here, Karen announced, moving to usher the reporters toward Claire. We'll have a proper press release about the new program tomorrow. Dad stepped toward me, conflict written across his face. Avery, don't. I backed away, nearly tripping over the chess pieces. Just don't. I turned and ran, ignoring Ethan's calls, ignoring the murmurs from the crowd. Behind me, I heard Claire's voice rise again, as I was saying about traditional family values. My car wouldn't start. Of course it wouldn't. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel, finally letting the tears fall. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I opened it, expecting more disaster. Instead, I found a photo, Helen's desk drawer, partially open, revealing a sealed envelope with my name on it. Below the photo was a message. Found this while they were packing up. Thought you should know. The moving guy. Through my tears, I smiled. Maybe Helen had one last move to play after all. Breaking into my own inheritance wasn't exactly how I'd planned to spend the evening, but here I was, picking the lock to Helen's study while Ethan kept watch. The moving truck wouldn't arrive until morning. This was my last chance. Someone's coming, Ethan whispered. I finally felt the lock click. 2 minutes. That's all I need. Claire's voice drifted up the stairs. I just need to grab something from the study. The decorator wants to see. The door opened before I could hide. Claire stood there, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the doorframe. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I knew it, she said, her voice rising. Mom. Dad. Avery's trying to steal. The letter. I held up my phone, showing her the photo. That's all I want. The one in Helen's desk. There is no letter. But her eyes darted to the drawer. Karen's footsteps thundered up the stairs. I lunged for the desk, yanking the drawer open as Claire screamed, "She's attacking me!" The envelope was there, just as the photo showed. I grabbed it just as Karen burst in, Dad right behind her. She pushed me. Claire stumbled backward dramatically, but her heel caught the antique rug. This time, her fall wasn't staged. She went down hard, crying out in genuine pain. Claire! Karen rushed to her side while Dad blocked the doorway, his face a storm of confusion and anger. I never touched her, I said, backing away. Check the security cameras. Helen had them installed everywhere, remember? To protect her antiques. Claire's face went white. The cameras are working perfectly, Ethan cut in, holding up his phone. I'm a developer, remember? Accessing their feed was pretty easy, especially since Avery still had Helen's passwords. Show me, Dad demanded. Ethan pulled up the footage. We watched in silence as it showed me entering the study, Claire following, and her deliberate stumble, followed by the real fall that no one had caused. You've been recording us? Karen's voice shook with rage. Invading our privacy? No, I said, opening Helen's letter. I've been protecting her legacy. The way she taught me. The letter was short but devastating. Helen had known about Claire and Karen's manipulations. She'd left the house to me with specific conditions, including one that said if anyone tried to contest the inheritance through legal means, everything would be donated to a children's charity instead. You can't prove when that was written, Karen snapped. We'll challenge it. Check the metadata on the security footage, Ethan said quietly. Helen recorded herself writing and sealing this letter 3 days before she died. She knew exactly what would happen. Claire struggled to sit up, her face twisted with pain and fury. This doesn't change anything. I'm still giving Dad what you never could, a real family, a grandchild, a future. Claire, Dad's voice cracked. Stop. We all turned to him. He looked older suddenly, defeated. I watched the footage, he said. All of it. The way you've been treating your sister, the things you've said about her students, her business. He shook his head. Helen was right. I've been blind. Richard, Karen started, but he held up his hand. The house stays with Avery, as Helen wanted. And Claire. He finally met my eyes. You owe your sister an apology. Claire's laugh was bitter. For what? For wanting what's rightfully mine? For trying to build something real instead of playing games? That's exactly what Helen was afraid of, I said, reading from the letter. Family isn't about ownership or control. It's about nurturing growth, supporting dreams, and understanding that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. I folded the letter carefully. Keep the furniture you moved. Keep the renovations. But the house is mine. And I know exactly what I'm going to do with it. What's that? Claire spat. I smiled, thinking of the adoption pamphlets waiting at home. I'm going to fill it with family. Just not the kind you understand. As I walked out, I heard Dad following. Maybe some bridges weren't completely burned after all. But first, I had a real legacy to build. 6 months later, I stood in Helen's study, my study now, watching the sunset paint the walls gold. The room still held her presence, though I'd made some changes. Her chess set, carefully restored, sat beside my gaming equipment. Old and new, just like she would have wanted. The sound of children laughing drifted up from the backyard. My advanced gaming class was having their graduation ceremony, complete with proud parents and a local news crew. This time, the coverage was about our program's success, not family drama. Miss Collins. Tommy poked his head in. They're ready for the presentation. Thanks, buddy. I'll be right down. He hesitated. Is it true? About you and Mr. Brooks adopting? News travels fast, I smiled. We're just starting the process. It's going to take time. Cool. He grinned. You're already pretty good at the mom stuff anyway. As he bounded away, I caught my reflection in Helen's old mirror. I looked different somehow, stronger maybe. More like her than ever. Dad was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. We'd been rebuilding slowly, coffee dates and careful conversations. Today was the first time he'd visited the house since everything happened. Karen left, he said quietly, after Claire's baby shower last week. Said she couldn't handle the shame of. He trailed off. The video going public? The security footage had leaked somehow, not through Ethan or me, showing Claire's manipulations and lies. Her traditional values program had collapsed overnight. Dad nodded. Claire's staying with her aunt in Colorado. Says she needs space to find herself before the baby comes. He met my eyes. She asked about you. Did she? Wanted to know if you'd really turn the house into some kind of gaming orphanage, her words. I laughed. Just a regular gaming academy. Though we do offer scholarships now, thanks to Helen's foundation. Through the window, I could see Ethan setting up the presentation screen, my students helping him arrange chairs. Sarah, who'd returned with a heartfelt apology after the truth came out, was organizing refreshments. Helen would be proud, Dad said. Not just of this, but of how you handled everything. You didn't let anger win. No, I agreed. I let love win. The way she taught me. We walked outside together. The evening air was warm, carrying the scent of Helen's roses, the one part of the garden I hadn't changed. As my students gathered for the ceremony, I noticed a familiar figure standing at the gate. Claire. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. When our eyes met, she didn't smile or wave. She just watched, one hand resting on her bump, as I awarded certificates and praised each student's achievements. As I announced our new adoption support initiative, partnering with local agencies to help families navigate the system. When the ceremony ended, I expected her to leave. Instead, she walked to Helen's rose garden, touching a bloom gently. She taught me about these once, Claire said as I approached. I pretended not to care, but I remembered everything she said. Why are you here? I don't know. She looked lost. Maybe to see what real legacy looks like. We stood in silence, the roses swaying between us like memories. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said finally. But my baby, your niece, I don't want her growing up thinking family is about winning and losing. It's not, I said. It's about growing. Sometimes together, sometimes apart. She nodded once, then turned to leave. The roses look good, she said softly. You take care of them like she did. I watched her go, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. We were both Helen's roses, grown in different gardens. Later, as Ethan and I cleaned up, he asked, "You okay?" I looked around at my home, at the gaming equipment and chess sets, at the adoption paperwork on my desk, at Helen's roses blooming in the twilight, at all the different ways love could grow. Yeah, I said. I'm exactly where I need to be. Family, I'd learned, wasn't about blood or birthright. It was about choosing to nurture what matters, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Just like Helen always said. I never expected a simple piece of paper to shatter my carefully constructed peace. But there it was, pinned to my front door with a black thumbtack, stark white against the dark wood, fluttering slightly in the autumn breeze. This isn't over, it read in messy block letters. 3 words that sent ice through my veins and brought my past rushing back like a tidal wave. My name is Lila, and until today I thought I'd finally built the quiet life I'd always dreamed of. A cozy craftsman house in a peaceful neighborhood, a loving partner, and a job at the local library where the biggest drama usually involved overdue books. But that note changed everything. I stood there, keys dangling forgotten in my hand, staring at those 3 words until they burned into my memory. The street behind me was quiet, almost too quiet. Mrs. Peterson's wind chimes next door tinkled softly, and somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Normal sounds that suddenly felt ominous. My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was Ethan, my partner. Hey babe, grabbing takeout from Ming's. Want your usual? I tried to keep my voice steady. Yeah, that sounds good. I paused, debating whether to tell him about the note. How long until you're home? 20 minutes, tops. Everything okay? You sound weird. Just tired, I lied, hating myself for it. See you soon. I pulled the thumbtack out and brought the note inside, laying it on our kitchen counter. The paper was cheap, the kind you'd find in any office supply store. Nothing distinctive about it except for those threatening words and what they represented. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water. I knew exactly who had left this message. Ryan, Ethan's younger brother, had been acting strange ever since we inherited this house from Ethan's grandmother 6 months ago. He'd made snide comments about how unfair it was, how he and his wife Vanessa deserved it more. But I never thought he'd escalate things like this. The last family dinner replayed in my mind. Ryan's cold stare across the table, Vanessa's sugary sweet voice asking pointed questions about our renovation plans. It must be nice, she'd said, twirling her wine glass, having such a beautiful home just Given to you. I'd spent years learning to control my reactions, to stay calm in the face of provocation. My past as a martial arts champion taught me that much, at least. But standing in my kitchen, staring at that note, I felt my carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. The sound of a car door slamming made me quickly shove the note into a drawer. Ethan walked in moments later, carrying bags of Chinese food and wearing his usual easy smile. "Got you extra spring rolls," he said, setting everything down and pulling me into a hug. I melted into his embrace, breathing in his familiar scent of coffee and cologne. Should I tell him? Would he believe me over his own brother? Questions churned in my stomach, souring my appetite. "You sure you're okay?" Ethan pulled back, studying my face with concern. "You look pale." The words caught in my throat as headlights swept across our front windows. Car was driving by slowly, too slowly. Through the curtains, I caught a glimpse of Ryan's black SUV. "Actually," I said, making a decision, "there's something we need to talk about." But before I could continue, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you enjoyed my little message." There's more where that came from. The peaceful life I'd built was unraveling, and I had a choice to make. I could stay quiet and hope this would blow over, or I could fight back. As I looked at Ethan's worried face, I realized there really wasn't a choice at all. I'd fought too hard for this life to let anyone take it from me, even if that someone was family. I showed Ethan the note over our cooling Chinese food. His face darkened as he read it, then read it again. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. "You think Ryan did this?" He finally looked up, his expression a mix of doubt and worry that made my stomach clench. "Who else would it be?" I pushed my untouched spring rolls around with my chopsticks. "You saw how he acted at the reading of the will. How he's been acting ever since." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd grown to recognize. "Ryan can be difficult but threatening notes? That's not his style." "Then whose style is it?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Because someone clearly has a problem with us being in this house. Maybe we should." Ethan was cut off by the sound of tires on gravel. Through our dining room window, I watched Ryan's black SUV pull into our driveway. Again. "Perfect timing," I muttered, standing up. But Ethan caught my wrist. "Let me handle this," he said softly. "He's my brother." That's exactly the problem, I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded and followed him to the door. Ryan and Vanessa stood on our porch like they owned it. Vanessa wore her usual perfectly coordinated outfit and artificial smile, while Ryan lounged against the railing with forced casualness. "Hope we're not interrupting dinner," Vanessa chirped, peering past us into the house. "We were just driving by and thought we'd stop in. For the second time today." "Actually, we were in the middle of something," I started, but Ethan was already stepping aside to let them in. "No problem," he said. "Come on in." I watched them walk into my home, our home, and felt my martial arts training kick in automatically. Analyzing positions, watching movements, staying aware of exits. "Old hobbits die hard." "Love what you've done with Grandma's china cabinet," Vanessa said, running her finger along the antique wood. "Though it's such a shame to change anything. This house has so much history." The way she emphasized that last word made my skin crawl. "What brings you by?" I asked directly, ignoring Ethan's warning glance. Ryan sprawled on our couch, his boots on our coffee table. Can a guy visit his big brother? Besides, Vanessa and I have been talking about the neighborhood, thinking about maybe moving closer. Closer? The word stuck in my throat. Vanessa nodded, still wandering the room like a realtor sizing up a property. "This street has such potential. The right people could really make something of these old houses." I caught the emphasis on right people and felt my hands curl into fists. Ethan must have noticed because he quickly jumped in. "That's great, but maybe we could discuss this another time?" Lila and I were actually in the middle of an important conversation. "Oh." Ryan's eyes locked onto mine. Anything interesting? The note burned in my pocket where I'd stuffed it earlier. I met his stare, remembering years of competition, of knowing exactly when someone was testing my defenses. Just house stuff, I said evenly. Speaking of which, how's that fixer-upper you bought last year coming along? Vanessa's smile flickered. Their investment property had turned into a money pit, and everyone knew it. It's progressing, she said tightly. Though some people just have all the luck, don't they? Getting a move-in ready house just handed to them. Tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. Ethan shifted uncomfortably between us, torn between family loyalty and defending our home. Nothing was handed to us, I said quietly. Grandma Carter made her choice. Did she? Ryan stood suddenly. Or did someone help her make it? Ryan, Ethan warned, but his brother was already heading for the door, Vanessa close behind. Thanks for the lovely visit, she called over her shoulder. We should do this more often. After all, we're family. After they left, Ethan and I stood in silence, listening to their car pull away. Chinese food was completely cold now, forgotten on the kitchen counter. Still think Ryan didn't write that note? I asked. Ethan didn't answer, and somehow that hurt more than any threat could. The next morning at the library, I found another note tucked inside the book I'd been reading during my lunch break. You don't belong here. Never did. The handwriting matched the first note perfectly. My hands trembled as I stared at the words. Someone had been watching me, waiting for the right moment. Quiet sanctuary of my workplace suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. Earth to Lila. Mia's voice made me jump. She peered over my shoulder, her usual cheerful expression falling as she caught sight of the note. What's that? I quickly folded the paper and shoved it into my pocket. Nothing. Just. Don't you dare say nothing. Mia pulled me into the biography section, away from prying eyes. You've been jumpy all morning and now this? Talk to me. Before I could respond, the sharp click of heels on hardwood announced Vanessa's arrival. She rounded the corner like she owned the place, designer purse swinging from her arm. Well, isn't this cozy? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The librarians having their little chat. We're working, I said flatly, turning away. Oh, I'm sure you are. Vanessa's voice dropped lower. Working on how to keep that house, right? Must be exhausting, always looking over your shoulder. My spine stiffened. Mia stepped closer to me, protective. Is there something we can help you find, Vanessa? Mia asked pointedly. Actually, yes. Vanessa pulled out a thick folder. I've been researching property laws. Fascinating stuff. Did you know there are all sorts of ways a will can be questioned? The threat hung in the air between us. I thought of Grandma Carter's final months. How she'd insisted I move in to help care for her while Ryan and Vanessa were too busy with their investment opportunities. The will was perfectly legal, I said quietly. Everything was witnessed and notarized. Legal doesn't always mean right. Vanessa leafed through her folder. For instance, when an elderly woman suddenly changes her will after her grandson's girlfriend moves in. Well, people might wonder about undue influence. My chest tightened. Is that what you're telling people? I'm not telling anyone anything. Her smile turned predatory. Yet? That's enough. Mia's voice was sharp. This is a library, not a courthouse. Take your threats somewhere else. Vanessa's facade cracked for just a moment, revealing something desperate underneath. You think you've won, don't you? Playing the perfect caretaker, the devoted granddaughter-in-law? Some of us had to work for everything we have. Like that falling apart house you can't afford to fix? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Vanessa slammed the folder down on a nearby table, making several patrons jump. You have no idea what it's like, watching everything handed to you while we struggle. That house should have been split equally. Ryan is family. You're just convenient. The old me would have responded differently. Would have shown her exactly how convenient I could be. Instead, I took a slow, steady breath. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Or what? She stepped closer. You'll call security? Have me banned from the public library? That would make a great story for the neighborhood gossips. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Ethan wondering why I wasn't answering his texts. But I couldn't look away from Vanessa's challenge. You want the truth? I kept my voice low. Grandma Carter left us the house because she knew what you and Ryan would do with it. Flip it for quick cash like every other property you've ruined. She wanted it preserved, not destroyed. Color flooded Vanessa's cheeks. For a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Instead, she gathered her folder with shaking hands. This isn't over, she hissed, the exact words from the first note. After she stormed out, Mia grabbed my arm. Okay, spill. What's really going on? I pulled out both notes, watching my friend's eyes widen as she read them. Have you told Ethan? He doesn't want to believe his brother could do this. I leaned against the shelves, suddenly exhausted. And maybe he's right. Maybe I'm paranoid. Or maybe, Mia said slowly, you need to stop playing nice and start playing smart. She was right. I'd been trying so hard to leave my past behind, to be the perfect partner and librarian, that I'd forgotten something crucial. Sometimes peace comes at a price. And I knew exactly how to make them pay it. After the confrontation at the library, I spent hours researching Ryan and Vanessa's failed property ventures. Public records told a story of mounting debt and desperate refinancing. But it was a social media notification that made my blood run cold. Someone had tagged Vanessa in photos from my old competition days. They knew. I stared at the images of my younger self on the martial arts circuit, trophies in hand, victory written across my face. The life I'd walked away from was now ammunition in their hands. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Nice roundhouse kick. Shame about that career-ending injury. Or was it? The walls of our cozy living room suddenly felt like they were closing in. I hadn't told Ethan everything about my past, about why I'd really left competitive fighting. Some secrets were better left buried. The front door opened and I quickly closed the browser. Ethan walked in, looking troubled. Ryan called, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. He wants to meet. Says he has information about the house that might interest us. What kind of information? He wouldn't say. Just that it's important. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe we should hear him out. Like we've heard him out about his last investment opportunity? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. The one that cost you $5,000? That was different. But his shoulders sagged. He's still my brother, Lila. Before I could respond, another text came through. Ask Ethan about the original will. The one from before you moved in. My heart stopped. Ethan, I said carefully, was there another will? His silence was answer enough. Why didn't you tell me? Because it doesn't matter. He finally looked at me. Grandma changed it legally. She wanted you to have this place. But originally it was supposed to go to Ryan, wasn't it? A knock at the door saved him from answering. Through the window, I saw a familiar face I hadn't seen in years. Jax Reynolds, my old training partner. Expecting someone? Ethan asked. I shook my head, moving to open the door. Jax stood there, looking more polished than I remembered in a business suit, but with the same calculating eyes. Long time no see, champ, he said easily. Mind the ficomin. Then tensed beside me. Who's this? An old friend, I said, though friend wasn't exactly the right word. What are you doing here, Jax? He stepped inside, taking in our home with an appraising look. Heard you might need some help. Ryan Carter's been asking questions about you around town. Interesting questions. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? The kind that make me think he's digging for dirt. Jax's smile was sharp. Good thing I know where all the bodies are buried, right? Ethan moved closer to me. Is that a threat? Actually, Jax pulled out his business card, Community Development Director. It's an offer of help. Ryan's been trying to push through some questionable permits for his properties. It would be a shame if someone looked too closely at those applications. I studied my old teammate, trying to read his angle. Why would you help me? Let's just say I owe you one. His eyes flickered to my left knee, the injury that ended everything. And I don't like bullies. Another text buzzed in my pocket. Time's running out. Meet tonight or the truth comes out. I looked between Ethan's worried face and Jax's knowing smirk. The past and present were colliding, and I had to choose, keep playing defense or finally strike back. Tell me about those permits, I said to Jax. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. An offense? That was something I knew very well. Lila, Ethan started, but I held up my hand. No more secrets, I said firmly. From any of us. It's time to end this. The weight of my past pressed against my chest, but for the first time since finding that first note, I felt steady. Ready. Let them come. I wasn't looking for a fight when I went for my evening run, but there was Ryan, leaning against my car in the library parking lot after closing. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty lot. Perfect timing for an ambush. Thought you'd want these back, he said, holding up a stack of photographs. Even from several feet away, I recognized them, shots from my competition days, including one from my last match. The one that ended everything. Where did you get those? I kept my voice steady, though my heart raced. Amazing what you can find online. He flipped through them casually. You were quite the champion. Until that unfortunate accident. His smile turned cruel. Or should I say arrangement? My hands curled into fists. What do you want, Ryan? Detrut. He pushed off my car, moving closer. About how you manipulated my grandmother. About the real reason you quit fighting. About everything. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? He pulled out his phone. Because I have some interesting messages here from your old sponsor. He remembers that night very clearly. The memory flashed unbidden, the pressure to throw the fight, the threats, the choice I made that cost me everything. Everything except my integrity. Is that what this is about? I stepped forward. You're trying to blackmail me? I prefer to think of it as negotiation. Ryan's confidence wavered slightly as I moved closer. The house for your secrets. Simple trade. Nothing's ever simple with you. I was close enough now to see the sweat on his forehead. Does Ethan know you're here? Ethan needs to understand what kind of person you really are. That's when I saw Vanessa in her SUV, phone raised, recording everything. Of course, they wanted me to snap to prove I was still violent, still dangerous. But I wasn't that person anymore. Or at least I thought I wasn't. Last chance, Ryan said, dropping the photos at my feet. Sign over the house or everyone learns the truth. I looked at the scattered photos, at my younger self frozen in moments of victory. Then I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, the desperate gleam in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He was terrified. You want the truth? Kept my voice low, controlled. Here it is. I didn't manipulate your grandmother. She saw through you both long before I came along. She knew about the gambling debts, the failed schemes, the money you borrowed from her savings. Ryan's face paled. That's a lie. Is it? Should we ask Jax about those permit applications? The ones with forged signatures? He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You don't know anything. Years of training kicked in automatically. One fluid movement and Ryan was on the ground, my knee pressed firmly between his shoulder blades. I heard Vanessa scream, car doors slamming. I know everything, I said quietly, holding him down with minimal effort. Every debt, every scheme, every lie. Your grandmother knew too. That's why she changed her will. Let him go. Vanessa was running towards us, phone still recording. You're proving everything we said about you. I released Ryan and stepped back, keeping my stance ready. He scrambled up, face red with rage and humiliation. You're done, he spat. When Ethan sees this. When I see what? We all turned. Ethan stood at the edge of the lot, expression unreadable. Behind him was Jax, holding a thick folder. Perfect timing, Jax said, smiling. I was just coming to discuss those permit applications with Ryan. And look, we have witnesses. Color drained from Ryan's face. Vanessa's phone lowered slowly. Ethan, Ryan started, but his brother held up a hand. I saw everything, he said quietly. And I heard everything. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. It's over, Ryan. All of it. Choice I'd made years ago to walk away rather than compromise my principles had cost me a career. But standing there, feeling Ethan's support, seeing Ryan and Vanessa's schemes crumbling, I knew I'd make the same choice again. Sometimes the biggest victories come from knowing when not to fight. But sometimes you have to show them exactly what you're capable of. Carter family gathering felt more like a powder keg waiting to explode. I watched from our kitchen as relatives filled the backyard, their cheerful conversations masking the tension underneath. Ethan squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that we had a plan. But plans have a way of falling apart. Ready? He asked, checking his phone where Jax's message waited. Documents in hand. On my way. I nodded, though my stomach churned. After the parking lot incident, Ryan and Vanessa had gone suspiciously quiet. Too quiet. Well, isn't this cozy? Vanessa's voice cut through the crowd as she and Ryan approached. She carried a thick manila envelope that made my skin crawl. Family all together, just like old times. Ryan wouldn't meet our eyes, but something in his stance set off warning bells in my head. He looked satisfied, like someone who knew they'd already won. Before everyone sits down, Vanessa announced loudly, we have something to share. She pulled documents from her envelope. Some interesting information about dear Lila's past. The chatter died down. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me. Vanessa, Ethan started, but she spoke over him. Did you know your sweet librarian was involved in illegal betting? That she took money to throw fights? She smiled coldly. We have proof. My chest tightened. That's not. And that's not all, Ryan finally spoke, his voice carrying across the yard. We found something else. About Grandma's last days. Ethan stiffened beside me. This wasn't part of the plan. Turns out, Ryan continued, there were some interesting withdrawals from her accounts. Large ones. Right around the time Lila moved in to help care for her. The accusations hung in the air like poison. I saw doubt creep into the relatives' faces, heard their whispers. Show them the rest, Vanessa urged her husband, pulling out more papers. About how she manipulated. Stop. Ethan's voice cut through the tension. Just stop. Why? Ryan challenged. Afraid of the truth? About how your girlfriend stole what should have been mine. I waited for Ethan to defend me, to reveal what we knew about Ryan's schemes. Instead, he hesitated just for a moment. But that moment was enough. Ethan, I whispered. He looked between me and his brother, torn. I need to see those documents. The ground seemed to shift under my feet. After everything, after the parking lot, after all our planning, he still doubted me? You don't need to see anything, I said quietly. You just need to trust me. But he was already reaching for the papers Vanessa held out triumphantly. The same papers we'd planned to expose as forgeries when Jax arrived. My phone buzzed. Accident on May. Delayed 20 minutes. Hold them off. Too late. Oh my, Vanessa gasped theatrically as she read over Ethan's shoulder. These bank records. Lila, how could you? The documents were lies. I knew they were lies. But watching Ethan's face change as he read them, seeing the doubt creep in despite everything we'd been through. I can explain, I started, but the words felt hollow. How do you explain away carefully crafted lies when the truth sounds just as unbelievable? Ryan moved closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You should have taken the deal. Now you lose everything. I looked around at the judging faces, at Ethan still reading those poison papers, at the home I'd fought so hard to protect. Everything I'd built, everything I'd changed about myself, crumbling because of carefully constructed lies. I trusted you, Ethan finally said, his voice breaking. After everything with Ryan, I chose you. You still can, I whispered. Just wait. For what? Ryan interrupted. More lies? More manipulation? Crowd had grown silent, watching the drama unfold. I saw phones recording, faces I'd grown to love now twisted with suspicion and judgment. In that moment, I realized something terrible. Sometimes the truth doesn't matter. Sometimes the story people want to believe is stronger than reality. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the whispers, the accusations, and the man I loved still holding papers that told lies about me. Sometimes walking away isn't surrender, it's survival. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because while they were all focused on destroying my reputation, they'd forgotten something crucial. I hadn't survived this long by playing nice. I was halfway to my car when Jax's voice cut through the murmur of the gathering. Those are interesting documents you've got there, Ryan. Mind if I take a look? Crowd parted as Jax strode through, briefcase in hand, looking more like a prosecutor than a community development director. I turned back, watching Ryan's confident smirk falter. This is a private family matter, Vanessa said quickly, trying to gather the papers. Oh, I think it's very public. Jax opened his briefcase. Especially considering these forged permit applications with Ryan's signature. And these bank records showing mysterious deposits right after Grandma Carter's jewelry went missing. The whispers shifted. I saw heads turning, expressions changing. That's ridiculous, Ryan sputtered. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Jax pulled out more documents. See, when you started digging into Lila's past, you caught the attention of some interesting people. People who remembered your gambling debts, Ryan. People who kept very detailed records. Finn stepped forward, the false documents forgotten in his hands. What gambling debts? Tell them, Ryan, I said quietly. Tell them about the real reason you need this house so badly. Ryan's face had gone pale. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Don't say anything. They're bluffing. Am I? Jax turned to the crowd. Mrs. Peterson, remember when your wedding rings disappeared during that dinner party? The one where Ryan helped clean up. The elderly neighbor gasped, hands flying to her chest. That's enough. Ryan lunged forward, but I was ready. One swift movement and he was on his knees, arm locked behind him, not hurting, just contained. Years of training made it look effortless. The truth, Ryan, I said firmly. All of it. Now. You don't understand, he gasped. The debts. They were going to hurt Vanessa. I had to do something. So you stole from your own grandmother? Finn's voice cracked. From our neighbors? I was going to pay it back. Ryan struggled against my hold. Once we got the house, we could sell it, start fresh. But you, he glared at me, you ruined everything. No, Ryan. I released him carefully. You did that yourself. Vanessa suddenly laughed, a sharp, desperate sound. You want the truth? Fine. We're broke. Worse than broke. Every property we bought is worthless. Every investment failed. And there you were, living in our house, playing happy families. It was never your house, a new voice said. We all turned to see Mia holding up her phone. And I have Grandma Carter's last video message to prove it. The screen showed the elderly woman in her hospital bed, clear-eyed and determined. I'm leaving the house to Ethan and Lila because they love it like I do. They'll preserve it, not sell it for quick cash like Ryan wants. I know about the stealing, the gambling. I'm not angry, just disappointed. The house needs protectors, not profiteers. Silence fell over the gathering. Ryan slumped, defeated. Vanessa's perfect mask cracked, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you, Ethan said to his brother. Even when the evidence was right in front of me, I wanted to believe in you. I never meant. Ryan stopped, looking lost. I didn't know how to ask for help. You still could, I said softly. But it starts with the truth. All of it. Ryan looked at me, then at Jax's documents, then at his wife. Something shifted in his expression, resignation, maybe, or relief. Okay, he whispered. Okay. As Ryan began to speak, confessing everything, I felt Ethan's hand slip into mine. An apology, an acknowledgement, a promise. Sometimes victory isn't about winning the fight. Sometimes it's about giving your opponent the chance to surrender with dignity, to choose truth over pride. I'd learned that lesson the hard way years ago in the ring. Now, watching Ryan finally face his demons, I realized that maybe some fights are won not by striking, but by standing firm until the truth has nowhere else to hide. The house would stay ours, but more importantly, the truth would stay too, all of it, mine and Ryan's both. 'Cause sometimes the only way forward is to stop running from your past and learn to walk with it instead. 6 months after the confrontation, I found another note in our mailbox. My hands didn't shake this time as I opened it, though my heart skipped when I recognized Ryan's handwriting. We're in Seattle now, it read. Starting over. Really starting over. Thank you for not pressing charges. For giving us a chance to make things right. I sat on our porch swing, the same spot where this all began, and finished reading. Ryan had entered rehab for his gambling addiction. Vanessa was working at a real estate firm, legitimately this time. They were in therapy, both together and separately. Everything okay? Ethan appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Old Hobbits die hard. Your brother wrote. I handed him the letter. They're doing better. He read in silence, then settled beside me on the swing. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of Mrs. Peterson's roses. She'd finally forgiven us for all the drama after Ryan returned her wedding rings, along with a heartfelt apology. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked quietly. Showing mercy instead of pressing charges? I thought about that moment after Ryan's confession when everyone expected me to demand justice, to make them pay for every threat, every lie. Instead, I'd offered a choice. Face the consequences legally or take the chance to rebuild their lives somewhere else. No, I said finally. Some fights aren't worth winning if the victory costs too much. Ethan nodded, understanding what I meant. His relationship with Ryan was different now, cautious, fragile, but healing. Like a broken bone that needed time to mend properly. Jax called today, he mentioned, changing the subject. The community center wants you to teach self-defense classes. Said something about putting your skills to better use than throwing his brother-in-law around parking lots. I laughed, surprising myself. The sound echoed across our front yard, where neighborhood kids now played freely, no longer afraid of the scary librarian with the mysterious past. Maybe I will, I mused. It might be time to stop hiding who I am. You never had to hide, Ethan said softly. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you did. Before I could respond, a car pulled into our driveway. Mia stepped out, carrying a folder of library event plans, while Jax followed with takeout bags. Family dinner? Mia called out, waving the folder. We can plan the summer reading program while we eat. Family. The words settled warmly in my chest. Not just Ethan now, but Mia and Jax too. Even Mrs. Peterson, who'd taken to leaving her famous apple pies on our porch every Sunday. As we moved inside, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Not just the librarian, not just the fighter, but something in between. Something whole. The house creaked softly around us, familiar and welcoming. Grandma Carter would have loved this, I thought. Not just preserving the building, but filling it with new life, new memories. Later that night, after our friends had left, I found one last surprise in Ryan's letter, a small key taped to the bottom of the page. "Found this in our things," his postscript read. "It belongs to Grandma's old jewelry box. The real one, not the decoy she kept on her dresser. Maybe you'll have better luck finding it than we did." I showed Ethan, watching his eyes light up with recognition. "The attic," he said. She always told us the house had secrets, but only for those patient enough to discover them properly. Tomorrow we'd climb into the attic and search for that hidden box. Tomorrow we'd add another chapter to this house's story. But for now, I was content to sit with Ethan, listening to our home's quiet breathing, feeling the perfect balance between my past and present. The last light of day filtered through our windows, casting long shadows that looked almost like they were dancing. Somewhere in Seattle, Ryan and Vanessa were building a new life. Here, in this house that had seen both battle and peace, we were building something too. Not just a home, but a testament to the fact that sometimes the strongest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them find their way back to themselves.
I never thought my life would implode because of a plain brown envelope. But there it was, sitting innocently on my doorstep when I got home from dropping Oliver at daycare. No return address, just my name, Harper Quinn, typed neatly on the front. I almost tossed it in with the junk mail. My hands were full of grocery bags, and I was already running late for a client consultation. But something about that envelope nagged at me. Maybe it was how precisely my name was centered, or how the paper felt expensive between my fingers. Inside were photos. At first, they didn't make sense, just random shots of downtown Seattle. Then I saw him. My husband Caleb, walking into the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Another shot showed him at their bar, leaning close to a woman with long dark hair. The final photo punched the air from my lungs, Caleb kissing her in the elevator, his hands tangled in that same dark hair. The timestamp showed these were taken just 3 days ago, when he'd told me he was pulling an all-nighter at the office for a product launch. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb, running late tonight. Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up. I stared at his message until the screen went dark. The lies felt different now, weighted with proof I couldn't unsee. 2 years of marriage, a beautiful son. And countless late nights at the office started realigning themselves in my mind like puzzle pieces, finally showing the real picture. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lily, still on for coffee tomorrow? You've been MIA lately. I hadn't told anyone about my suspicions. How Caleb's shirts sometimes smelled of unfamiliar perfume. How he'd started keeping his phone face down and taking calls in another room. I'd buried those doubts beneath the routine of caring for Oliver and managing my freelance makeup clients. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. But now, I laid the photos on our kitchen counter, the one Caleb had insisted on upgrading to marble last year. Everything in our house suddenly felt like a prop in some elaborate performance. The family photos on the walls. The matching coffee mugs in the cabinet. Even Oliver's artwork on the fridge seemed to mock me with its bright, innocent colors. My hands shook as I texted Lily back, "Actually, can you come over tonight? Need to talk." Then I called my afternoon client and rescheduled. I couldn't possibly focus on making someone else look beautiful when my own life was crumbling. I spent the next hour going through Caleb's things, looking for what? More evidence? Some explanation that would make this all make sense? In his closet, I found receipts for restaurants I'd never been to, tucked into jacket pockets. A small jewelry box from Tiffany's hidden behind his winter sweaters, definitely not something I'd ever received. The front door opened at exactly 6:15 p.m., right on schedule. "Honey? Why's your car still here?" Caleb's voice carried upstairs, confused but not worried. "Not yet. I looked at myself in our bedroom mirror, smoothing my hair and straightening my shoulders. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same person who'd walked through that door with groceries this morning. That Harper had been naive, trusting. This Harper had evidence scattered across her marriage bed and rage simmering beneath her skin. "Up here," I called out, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "We need to talk about your late nights at the office." His footsteps paused on the stairs. In that moment of silence, I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, crafting explanations and excuses. But I had photos that told the truth, and soon he'd realize that his carefully constructed double life was about to come crashing down. I picked up the envelope and waited for my husband to walk into a conversation that would change everything. The dinner table felt like a minefield. My mother kept glancing at Caleb's empty chair while Dad pushed his pot roast around his plate. Oliver, blissfully unaware of the tension, happily smeared mashed potatoes across his face. "Another late meeting?" Mom's voice carried that edge I'd grown to hate, the one that said "I told you so" without actually saying it. "Product launch," I replied automatically, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. It had been 3 days since I'd found the photos, and I still hadn't confronted Caleb. Each night, he'd come home with perfectly crafted excuses and gentle kisses that felt like betrayal. "You know, Harper," Dad set down his fork, "when your mother and I were starting out." "James," Mom warned, but he continued. "No, Margaret, she needs to hear this. When we were young, I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. But I never missed Sunday dinner. Not once." I focused on wiping Oliver's face, grateful for the distraction. "Caleb's company is different. Tech startups are demanding." "Too demanding to see his son?" Mom's question hung in the air like smoke. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb: "Sorry, babe. Meeting running long. Tell your parents I'm sorry to miss dinner. Kiss Oliver goodnight for me." I showed them the message, watching their expressions darken. The same expressions they'd worn when I'd announced my engagement to Caleb 3 years ago. They'd never said it outright, but they'd seen something in him that I'd been too in love to notice. "I should get Oliver home for bed," I said, standing up. "It's past his bedtime." Mom followed me to the door while Dad got Oliver ready. "Sweetheart, is everything okay? You seem different lately." For a moment, I almost told her everything. About the photos, the lies, the nights I lay awake listening to Caleb shower as soon as he got home, washing away evidence of where he'd been. But telling her would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." She hugged me tight, and I had to fight back tears. "You know you can always come home, right? You and Oliver both." The drive home was quiet except for Oliver's soft snoring from the backseat. I took the long way, passing by Caleb's office building. His car wasn't in its usual spot, but I hadn't expected it to be. I wondered if he was with her right now, in some expensive hotel room, while I drove our son home alone. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed a woman standing near our front door. For a wild moment, I thought it might be her, the dark-haired woman from the photos. But as I got closer, I recognized Lily's familiar silhouette. "Surprise," she called out softly, noticing Oliver asleep in my arms. "I brought wine and that terrible reality TV show you love." Inside, after putting Oliver to bed, Lily poured us each a generous glass of red. "Okay, spill. You've been avoiding me for days, and you look like hell." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd saved. "Someone sent these to me." Lily's sharp intake of breath said everything. She flipped through them slowly, her expression hardening with each swipe. "That son of a bitch." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, the words finally breaking free. "I haven't confronted him yet. I keep waiting for." "I don't know what I'm waiting for." "You're waiting for it not to be true," Lily said gently. "But Harper, you need to." The front door opened, and Caleb's voice called out, "Honey?" Why are all the lights still on? Lily and I froze, staring at each other. My phone, with the damning photos still displayed, sat between us on the coffee table. Footsteps approached the living room, and I had to decide, face him now, with Lily as my witness, or continue pretending everything was fine. I reached for my phone just as Caleb walked in, but I wasn't quite fast enough. His eyes caught the image on the screen, and for just a moment, his carefully maintained facade cracked. After Caleb's hasty retreat from the living room that night, I couldn't sleep. His laptop sat on his desk, taunting me. He never logged out, why would he? We'd always trusted each other. Or at least, I'd trusted him. The clock read 3:17 a.m. when I finally sat at his desk. His password was still Oliver's birthday. Some things hadn't changed, even if everything else had. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it, a second email account hidden in his browser history. The username made my stomach turn, cfoster.private@gmail.com. Real creative, Caleb. The inbox loaded, and there she was. Vanessa Reed. Dozens of emails, stretching back months. My hands shook as I clicked the first one. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? Date stamped 3 days after Oliver's second birthday party. I kept reading, each message worse than the last. Lunch meetings that turned into hotel afternoons. Weekend business trips that were actually romantic getaways. Plans, promises, declarations of love, all while I was at home, raising our son, believing his lies about late nights at the office. Harper? I jumped. Caleb stood in the doorway, his hair messy from sleep. For a moment, he looked like the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, real. Then his eyes fell on the laptop screen. I can explain, he started. Explain what? My voice sounded strange, distant. How you've been sleeping with your coworker since our son turned 2. Or how you took her to Paris last month when you said you were at a tech conference. He stepped forward. It's not what you think. Really? I turned the screen toward him. Because I think it's exactly what these emails show. You and Vanessa planning your little rendezvous while I'm at home, being the perfect wife, the devoted mother. Lower your voice, he hissed. You'll wake Oliver. Oh, now you care about Oliver? The laugh that escaped me didn't sound like my own. Where was that concern when you were missing his doctor's appointments for your afternoon hookups? His face changed then, hardening into something I didn't recognize. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Vanessa. Yes, it's been going on for months. Because with her, I don't have to pretend to be perfect all the time. She doesn't look at me with disappointment when I work late or miss a family dinner. No, she just looks at you naked in hotel rooms while your wife and child wait at home. He flinched. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up so quickly the chair crashed backward. You want to talk about fair? I'm going to show you fair. I grabbed my phone and started forwarding the emails to myself. Caleb lunged for the laptop, but I blocked him. Don't, he warned. Think about what you're doing. Think about Oliver. I am thinking about Oliver. I'm thinking about how I'm going to explain to our son why his father is a lying, cheating. A cry from down the hall cut me off. Oliver, awakened by our fighting. We both froze, the sound of our son's distress cutting through the tension like a knife. I'll get him, Caleb said, moving toward the door. No. I stepped in front of him. You don't get to comfort him. Not anymore. As I walked to Oliver's room, I heard Caleb call after me, Harper, please. We can work this out. I'll end it with Vanessa. I'll do whatever you want. I picked up our crying son, holding him close, breathing in his innocent scent. It's okay, baby, I whispered. Mommy's here. Over Oliver's shoulder, I watched Caleb hovering in the doorway, his face a mask of regret and desperation. But all I could see were those emails, those lies, those betrayals playing on repeat in my mind. "Pack a bag," I said quietly, still rocking Oliver. "I want you gone before we wake up." "Harper." "And Caleb?" I met his eyes, letting him see all the hurt and anger I'd been holding back. "Tell Vanessa she can have you. I'm done." Oliver's sobs quieted to hiccups as Caleb's footsteps retreated down the hall. In the darkness of the nursery, I made a silent promise to my son. This wasn't the end of our story, it was just the beginning of a new one. The divorce papers sat untouched on my kitchen counter for 3 days. My lawyer said they were straightforward: a clean break, joint custody of Oliver, division of assets. Simple. Except nothing about destroying a family is simple. Caleb called again, his 4th attempt today. I let it go to voicemail, like all the others. Instead, I focused on Oliver playing with his blocks on the floor, building towers just to knock them down. Each crash made him giggle, completely unaware that his world was falling apart too. The doorbell rang. I checked my phone, no scheduled visits, no deliveries. Through the peephole, I saw Caleb, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. "Harper, please," he called through the door. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I glanced at Oliver, still absorbed in his blocks. "Stay right there, baby," I whispered, stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind me. Caleb looked terrible. His usual pressed shirts and perfect hair replaced by wrinkled clothes and dark circles under his eyes. "You're not answering my calls. I'm busy keeping our son's life as normal as possible. I miss him. I miss you both." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "We can fix this." I ended things with Vanessa. Completely. I even requested a transfer to a different department. "Did you tell her about Paris?" The words came out sharp, cutting. "About the apartment you were planning to buy there?" I saw the real estate emails, Caleb. You weren't just having an affair, you were building a whole other life. His face paled. "Those were just fantasies. I never meant to get caught." I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "You know what the worst part is? I keep thinking about all those nights I apologized to Oliver for you missing bedtime. All those times I defended you to my parents. I made excuses for you while you were planning your escape. It wasn't like that." He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous gesture I used to find endearing. "I was lost, Harper. The pressure at work, trying to be the perfect husband and father. I cracked. Vanessa was just convenient? A mistake." His voice cracked. "The biggest mistake of my life. But we have history, Harper. We have Oliver. We can get through this." A car pulled into our driveway, Vanessa's sleek BMW. My heart stopped as she stepped out, designer handbag clutched like armor. "What is she doing here?" I hissed at Caleb. I don't know." He looked genuinely shocked. "I swear, Harper, I didn't." "Save it." I turned to face Vanessa as she approached, her confidence faltering slightly when she saw my expression. "Harper," she started, "I know this is inappropriate, but we need to talk. All of us." "About what?" "How you and my husband planned your perfect Parisian life while I changed diapers." "No, about," she opened her bag, pulling out an envelope. "About this." Inside were more photos, dozens of them. But these weren't of Caleb and Vanessa. They were of Caleb with other women. Different hotels, different cities, different dates. Some from before Vanessa, some after. "He's been lying to both of us," Vanessa said quietly. "I found these on his work laptop yesterday." There are others. I stared at the photos, each one a fresh betrayal. All those business trips, all those late nights. My hands started shaking. Harper, Caleb stepped toward me. I can explain. The sound of Oliver's laughter drifted through the front door, innocent and pure. Something inside me hardened. No, I said, my voice steady. No more explanations. No more lies. I turned to Vanessa. Thank you for showing me these. You can keep him. Harper, please. Caleb reached for me again. The papers are inside. Sign them by Friday, or I'll make sure every woman you've ever deceived gets their day in court. I opened the front door. And Caleb? Oliver's birthday party is next weekend. Don't come. I walked inside, leaving them both on the porch, and sat down next to my son. He immediately handed me a block, smiling his father's smile. Build, Mommy, he said simply. So I did, helping him create something new from the pieces of our broken world. The fashion show prep room buzzed with nervous energy. Models rushed between makeup stations while designers made last-minute adjustments. This was my first major event since the separation, and my hands trembled slightly as I applied eyeliner to a willowy blonde. Harper? My client list coordinator appeared, tablet in hand. There's been a change. The lead designer wants you to do Vanessa Reed's makeup. She's closing the show. The eyeliner pencil snapped in my grip. I don't work with homewreckers, I said quietly, keeping my voice steady despite the surge of anger. She specifically requested you. Said you're the best in Seattle. He paused, checking his tablet. It would mean a lot of exposure. She's being featured in Vogue next month. Of course she was. Vanessa always landed on her feet, even after our confrontation. The photos she'd revealed about Caleb's other affairs had done nothing to diminish her own role in destroying my marriage. Fine, I said, surprising myself. Send her over. Vanessa appeared minutes later, wearing a silk robe and an uncertain expression. Harper, Sit. I gestured to the chair, already reaching for my brushes. And don't talk. I need to concentrate. She complied, and I began working. Each stroke of the brush was precise, professional. I could make her beautiful, or I could make her look like a circus clown. The power was intoxicating. I left him, she said suddenly, breaking our tense silence. After those photos. I couldn't trust anything he said. My hand stilled. I'm not your therapist. No, but you're the only one who understands. She met my eyes in the mirror. He's seeing someone new already. Did you know? I didn't, and the knowledge hit harder than expected. My brushstrokes became slightly more aggressive. Some junior executive at his company. 25, fresh out of business school. Vanessa winced as I applied the eyeliner with perhaps too much force. He has a type, doesn't he? Women who admire him, look up to him. Until they realize it's all an act. Stop talking. My voice cracked slightly. Just. Stop. Harper? Lily appeared behind me, concern etched on her face. She'd been helping coordinate the show's logistics. Everything okay here? Fine, I said, adding the final touches to Vanessa's makeup. We're done. You're perfect. Go destroy someone else's life. Vanessa stood, her expression complicated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just about Caleb. About everything. As she walked away, Lily grabbed my arm. What was that about? And why didn't you tell me she'd be here? I didn't know. I started packing up my supplies, hands shaking. Did you know about Caleb's new girlfriend? Harper. Did you? Lily's silence was answer enough. I pushed past her, needing air, needing space. In the hallway, I bumped into someone, the lead designer. Harper Quinn? Perfect timing. I wanted to discuss using you for our Paris Fashion Week team next month. Paris. Where Caleb and Vanessa had planned their future. Where he was probably taking his new girlfriend now. I need a minute. I rushed toward the exit, ignoring the calls behind me. Outside, the Seattle rain matched my mood. My phone buzzed, a text from my mom, Oliver's having a great time. Don't worry about rushing back. Another buzz. Caleb, can we talk about adjusting the custody schedule? Sarah would like to meet Oliver. Sarah. The new girlfriend had a name. I stared at my reflection in a rain puddle, mascara running down my cheeks. The woman looking back at me seemed foreign, broken, lost. But something else flickered in those eyes. Determination. Rage. Power. My phone buzzed again. The lead designer, Paris offer stands. All expenses paid, 3-week contract. Need answer tonight. I thought about Caleb and his parade of women. About Vanessa and her perfectly made-up face. About Oliver, who deserved a mother he could be proud of. Walking back inside, I found the lead designer. About Paris, I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in months. I'm in. But I have one condition, I want to do Vanessa's makeup for the entire show. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about rising above, shining brighter, and showing them exactly what they lost. Paris in December wasn't the romantic dream I'd imagined. Rain pelted the hotel windows as I unpacked my makeup supplies, trying to focus on tomorrow's show. 3 weeks of working alongside Vanessa, my own personal version of hell, dressed up as career advancement. My phone lit up with a video call from home. Oliver's face filled the screen, chocolate smeared across his cheeks. Mommy! Look what Sarah made. Sarah. Of course she was there during Caleb's custody time. My stomach clenched as the camera panned to show elaborate Christmas cookies spread across my former kitchen counter. My kitchen. Where that woman now played happy families with my son. They're beautiful, baby, I managed. Are you being good for Daddy? Sarah's teaching me to decorate. His innocent excitement felt like needles in my heart. When are you coming home? Soon, sweetheart. Just 2 more. The call dropped. Typical Paris hotel Wi-Fi. I tried reconnecting, but messages started flooding in instead. Caleb, Oliver's asking for you. Maybe you should reconsider this Paris thing. Mom, he needs stability right now, not a globe-trotting mother. Lily, call me ASAP. Caleb's filing for primary custody. The room spun. I grabbed the desk for support, knocking over my makeup case. Brushes and palettes scattered across the floor like my shattered life. A knock at the door. Vanessa stood there, perfect as always in her model pose. Harper? The designer wants to discuss tomorrow's look. Get out. My voice sounded strange, distant. Are you okay? You look like someone who lost everything? I laughed, harsh and broken. While you're here living your dream career, my ex-husband and his new girlfriend are stealing my son. Vanessa stepped inside, closing the door. Caleb's filing for custody? Don't pretend you care. I started picking up scattered makeup brushes, hands shaking. This is what you wanted, right? To destroy my life? I never wanted. Save it. A brush snapped in my grip. You know what's funny? I thought doing your makeup, making you look perfect for these shows, would be my revenge. Show you both what you lost. But you didn't lose anything, did you? You got your career, your freedom. I'm the one who lost everything. Harper, stop. Vanessa grabbed my hands, forcing me to look at her. Caleb doesn't deserve Oliver. Or you. Or any woman. He's a narcissist who collects people like trophies. I learned that too late, but you're stronger than I ever was. I pulled away. Strong? I'm in Paris doing makeup while another woman bakes cookies with my son. No, you're in Paris building your career while Caleb plays house with his latest victim. She picked up my phone, showing me the cookie photo. Look closer. I did. Behind Oliver's smiling face, I saw what she meant. The kitchen I'd loved was now stark white, my colorful curtains gone, my spice rack replaced with modern minimalism. Sarah's influence, erasing me piece by piece. He's doing to her what he did to us, Vanessa said quietly. Creating the perfect life, the perfect woman. Until she stops being perfect. My phone buzzed again. Lily, don't panic. I've called your lawyer. Sarah's history of job hopping and 3 failed engagements won't look good in court. We've got this. Lily. Always fighting in my corner while I ran away to Paris. The show starts in 12 hours, Vanessa said, gathering my scattered supplies. Make me beautiful. Make me perfect. Then we'll talk about how to handle Caleb. I stared at her, this woman I'd hated for so long. Why would you help me? Because I sent those first photos to you. She met my eyes steadily. I knew what he was doing to others, and I chose you to send them to. Because you seemed strong enough to break the cycle. The makeup brush felt different in my hand now. Not a tool for revenge, but for transformation. For both of us. Sit down, I said, my voice stronger. Let's make you unforgettable. Then you can tell me everything you know about Caleb's patterns. Every detail. Sometimes rock bottom isn't an ending. Sometimes it's where you find your strongest allies and your clearest purpose. The courthouse hallway felt endless. My heels clicked against marble as I approached the mediation room, Lily and my lawyer flanking me like guards. Through the glass, I could see Caleb and Sarah already seated, heads bent together in conversation. Remember, my lawyer whispered, stick to the facts. Don't let him provoke you. I nodded, clutching a manila envelope that contained everything Vanessa had given me in Paris, photos, emails, hotel receipts. A paper trail of destruction that led straight to Caleb's perfectly crafted facade. The door opened. Caleb stood, all corporate charm and practiced concern. Harper, you're looking well. Paris agreed with you. Let's skip the small talk. I sat across from him, noting how Sarah's hand tightened possessively on his arm. She looked younger in person, more vulnerable. Just his type. The mediator began with custody arrangements. Caleb's lawyer presented their case for primary custody, citing my unstable work schedule and international travel commitments. My client can provide consistency, he argued. A stable home environment with his fiancée. Fiancé? The word escaped before I could stop it. Sarah's diamond ring caught the fluorescent light, mocking me. Caleb smiled that familiar smile, the one that used to make me feel special, chosen. We were going to announce it this weekend. Oliver's already calling her mommy. The room tilted. Lily's hand found mine under the table as Caleb continued, it's time to be realistic, Harper. Oliver needs to know the truth? I opened the envelope, sliding the first photo across the table. About his father's pattern of manipulation? Caleb's smile faltered. Sarah leaned forward, confusion clouding her features as she studied the image, Caleb with another woman, dated just 2 weeks ago. This is irrelevant, Caleb's lawyer interjected, but I kept going, laying out photo after photo, email after email. 6 women in the past year, I said quietly. Each one thinking they were special, chosen. Each one manipulated into believing they were the only one. I turned to Sarah. Has he taken you to La Petite Maison in Paris yet? It's his favorite spot for proposals. Sarah's face drained of color. Caleb? She's lying, he snapped, but his mask was cracking. These are obviously doctored. The hotel receipts aren't doctored, I continued. Neither are the credit card statements or the burner phone records. Would you like to explain those? The mediator cleared her throat. Perhaps we should take a break. No. Sarah's voice shook. I want to hear this. She picked up one of the photos, studying it. This was last week. You said you were in Vancouver for work. Caleb stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor. This is ridiculous. I won't sit here and listen to these accusations. Sit down, Mr. Foster, the mediator ordered. Or this mediation ends and we move directly to court proceedings. He sat, but his eyes burned into mine. Why are you doing this? Because Oliver deserves better, I said simply. Better than watching you cycle through women, better than learning that lies and manipulation are normal. Better than becoming you. Sarah stood quietly, slipping off her engagement ring. It clinked against the table as she walked out, dignity intact, but shoulders shaking. You've ruined everything, Caleb hissed. No, I corrected him. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you can't ruin anyone else. I turned to the mediator. I have a custody proposal. Joint legal custody, but Oliver's primary residence stays with me. Mr. Foster can have supervised visitation until he completes therapy and parenting classes. Caleb laughed bitterly. You think this makes you better than me? Destroying my relationship, my reputation? No, Caleb. This makes me different from you. Because unlike you, I'm thinking about Oliver's future, not my revenge. As we left the mediation room, Lily squeezed my hand. You okay? I watched Caleb through the glass, alone now, staring at the evidence of his destructive patterns spread across the table. For the first time, he looked small, ordinary, just a man who couldn't stop breaking things. Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. I really am. 1 year later, I sat in my home office, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen. The blog post was almost finished, my 100th entry about surviving betrayal and rebuilding life after divorce. What had started as therapy had somehow become a lifeline for thousands of women going through similar struggles. A notification popped up, Vanessa Reed liked your post. We'd developed an unexpected friendship since Paris. Bonding over our shared experience and determination to warn others about men like Caleb. Her modeling career had taken off, and she'd become an advocate for women's empowerment in the fashion industry. Oliver's laughter drifted through the open window. He was playing in the backyard with Caleb, their first unsupervised visit since the custody agreement. I watched them from my desk, noting how Caleb had changed. The designer suits were gone, replaced by casual clothes and genuine smiles. Therapy had stripped away his perfect facade, revealing something more human underneath. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, thank you for saving me from making a huge mistake. Getting married next month to someone real. Would love for you to do my makeup for the wedding. I smiled, remembering how she'd reached out months ago, wanting to understand what had happened. We'd met for coffee, two women healing from the same man's manipulation. Her engagement ring now belonged to someone who deserved her trust. Harper? Lily appeared in my doorway, carrying 2 glasses of wine. Your parents just called. They want to know if you're still coming to dinner tonight. Wouldn't miss it. I saved my blog post and closed the laptop. Dad's making his famous pot roast. The same pot roast from that awful dinner when everything started falling apart? The very same. I took a glass from her, remembering that night. Who would have thought that was actually the beginning of everything coming together? Outside, Oliver squealed as Caleb pushed him on the swing. Higher and higher, but not too high, Caleb was learning boundaries, finally understanding that love wasn't about possession or perfection. Your latest post is trending, Lily noted, scrolling through her phone. The one about forgiveness, not meaning reconciliation. It's what everyone struggles with most. I watched Oliver jump from the swing into Caleb's arms. Learning that you can forgive someone while still choosing yourself. The doorbell rang. My date for dinner, a kind-eyed photographer I'd met at Fashion Week. We were taking things slowly, both carrying our own histories, both understanding that trust is earned in small moments rather than grand gestures. Time to go in, I called out the window. Oliver ran inside, Caleb following more slowly. Thanks for today, he said, lingering in the doorway. And for everything else. The therapy recommendations, the second chance with Oliver. We're both doing better this way, I replied simply. After they left, Oliver for his playdate, Caleb to his own life, my date to reschedule for another time, I returned to my laptop. The cursor still blinked, waiting for me to finish my story. I typed, revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, building yourself into something stronger than before. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, loving deeply, and letting go of the perfect picture you thought your life would be. Lily read over my shoulder. That's it? That's how you're ending it? No, I said, adding one final line, because the end of one story is just the beginning of another. And this time, I'm writing my own. I hit publish and stood up, ready for dinner with my parents. Ready for whatever came next. The manila envelope of Caleb's indiscretions still sat in my desk drawer, untouched for months. I didn't need it anymore, its purpose had been served, not just in saving me, but in saving others too. Outside, the sunset painted Seattle in shades of possibility. My phone buzzed with notifications as the blog post went live. Each one representing someone else finding their way through darkness toward something real. Sometimes the happiest endings aren't about getting everything you wanted, but about discovering what you actually needed. And sometimes, just sometimes, those two things turn out to be completely different stories.